blap, chicka chicka blap blap, blippity blap blap, chicka chicka quamin.
Blap.
Blip 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 blap blap.
Yo.
Chickity chick chick wow.
Yo.
Chickity chicka chick chick quamin.
Blap. 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 Blap.
Blap 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 blow.
Start
Oh, it
the
says
show.
hot mic. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I hope your Thanksgiving was full of thanks. I am David L
I
Corbo.
hope they heard that.
No, they heard that. It was a hot mic. We was blapping. We was guamming. Guamming at you live from the Standard Coffee Shop in Lady Lake, Florida.
And casino.
And casino. By the way, guys, you should be leaving 5-star reviews if you can. If you find it in your heart and you want to give back to Matt Hepner over at the Standard Coffee Shop, that would be a great way to do it. That's TopLobsta, the father of disinformation. I didn't tell people who you were.
You guys got to keep supporting the coffee shop because, to be honest, the guy's kind of becoming a little bit of a superstar.
Dude!
It's worrying me.
100,000 views on YouTube. Matt's killing it. Pretty soon, I guess this is just going to be Matt's show. And then we'll just be the side act. Blippity blap blap. Anyway, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. We aren't going there anymore because we're now not giving the poors
Should
anything.
we even be doing this?
We're not. Well, we should tell people, where you want to support us in the future when you hear this come out.
Yeah, over
on
here,
YouTube.
do that. You can buy a shirt.
Buy a
whatever.
shirt.
Yeah, the shirts are cool.
Yeah.
Go support more of the standard stuff.
Oh yeah, there you go. It's just really all about him. I'm getting tired of it. I'm worried he's going to overshadow us, and we're not going to be cool
To be
anymore.
honest, we still have the home studio, so we don't need to do this.
We don't need to be here anymore.
No,
I think we just bail on this whole studio in the Standard Coffee Shop.
Amen.
Amen.
You know what? I'm leaving right now. But
Goodbye.
let's do the show real quick.
Okay, we'll do the show first, and then we brought him back right away because his topics always take a lot of time to unpack, and he has so much information. And by the way, the part one of this is crushing on YouTube, so I'm very excited to welcome back Austin
Also,
Picard.
we might not even. I mean, we're gonna keep us to a 30. At 30 minutes, I don't care if we're done talking about it or even less.
Oh,
than
we'll
30
just
minutes.
unorganically segue. All right, fine. So first
No
off, before we
problem
get
at all,
started, where can people find you, Austin? And thank you for coming back.
Absolutely, and yeah, the hard segue will not be any sort of issue, I don't think. But yeah, as far as just everyone go check out the Underclass podcast. It's definitely the best place to find me, and I say the Patreon is also the best place to support me as well. Follow me on Twitter. I never plug it, but Theater Thug AWP, I believe, is my handle. And yeah, I don't know, guys. I just at this point, I'm feeling like, as we had mentioned, the influencer industrial complex, the last episode, I felt like that just as far as what Top was describing privately before we started the show, it seems to be perfectly in line with that sort of strategic avenue of the mind war operatives that are obviously laying the groundwork and fully, I think, systematically entrenching this social engineering, conditioning, just exploitative, strategic outcome in many ways. But at the same time, it's leveraging these prominent personalities in order to, one, stage these narratives by setting the table on what is and what is not the concept of allowable opinion. And then through that, they sort of misdirect the public within the concept of the false conclusion, I think, aspect of things. And that's where I do really believe they reveal, the sinister nature of what they're attempting to pursue and achieve in that moment. And but yeah, if you want to just kind of like, introduce what you were talking about.
Yeah, we'll add some context, and I think we'll try to be a little bit careful with it because
Should we show that tweet?
yeah,
Let's be careful with it. No, let's blow this shit.
It's not about being careful. I mean, I want to be specific.
Yes.
Because I don't hate the people that are involved with this. I got a lot of questions.
I got a lot of questions too. So
Here's the tweet.
Now this tweet, I honestly have a feeling is a direct. So it's
don't
from
think it is. I
Timothy Alberino.
Yeah.
He says there is a lot of nutty Nephilim theories out there that are both fundamentally unbiblical and wildly irrational. A word of advice: don't believe anything you hear on podcasts, and never go full retard. Interesting set of themes in there. Podcast, Nephilim, retard. I don't know who they're talking about. And I don't know that they're talking about us, but
I don't think so.
Well, what I will say is I wouldn't be surprised if through the grapevine, the episode that we did with Karen Wilkinson got out, which we did have a very serious discussion about Timothy Alberino and particularly his take on the alien disclosure narrative as it applies to whether or not they are demonic or, you know, something adjacent. And I would say that we've built a lot of theory over the 2 years that we've done this show on this foundation of like a Michael Heiser, right? Where we're looking at the alien narrative as a rebranded sort of how would you put it? Not a theory, but a visage, really, right? Like a facade,
An image,
and what these things actually are is of the demonic realm. They are the machinations in one way or another of the fallen, of the Nephilim, of things that are stuck in this low vibrational realm that seem to maybe use, let's say, alien grays as meat sacks that they can temporarily inhabit to engage in a limited way with the physical realm. This comes by way of Karen Wilkinson. The thing that really sticks out as strange to me is we talked about it on the show. So this isn't like breaking news. There are other people that we're aware of, I don't think we're going to say their names, who have been, let's say, on their radar. They're being Timothy Alberino, maybe the Blurry Creatures guys, and whose ideologies really are in alignment with Michael Heiser's. I don't even want to say ours because Heiser is the guy that laid this foundation long before we came along. I just happen to agree with it wholeheartedly. And so they've had interactions with these people, like Karen Wilkinson and like others, and they've actually not aired the episodes. And it's interesting that they all have this thing in common. They would maintain that the alien disclosure is an alien deception, maybe the biggest deception, and that it is of a demonic nature. And so if you listen to these guys,
to disclaim it, I try to listen to Alberino and Blurry, but I'm not exactly sure what their take is on the aliens. They're physical creatures, yeah. They're possibly also spiritual creatures, yes, too. But then it starts to muddy the waters with, are they demonic? And
which, by the way, gets a lot of ridicule, pretty brash ridicule coming from guys like Alberino. Well, they'll say, if you say that aliens are demons,
you're retarded.
You're retarded. You know, and I don't know that anybody's actually out there saying that outside of shorthand, just to like maybe get the conversation going. But and let's remove the idea that they're talking about our show. It's a very nuanced opinion. We've had discussions with people like Karen Wilkinson, like L.A. Marzulli, like our own buddy Colin, who seems to be going through some sort of firsthand experience. And this
we've had discussions with Alberino himself, and he's conceded. Well, not just I don't know if conceded, but like said, like, you know what? There's something to that. It's just very strange, and as it comes on the heels of this new documentary, The Age of Disclosure. Which is basically a government-funded documentary with like Noel Harari and other kind of politicians and disclosure experts that are all paid for by the
disclosure experts.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of pause, and I don't want to start to throw assumptions around. Although I'm sure like Matt would think that we're just throwing assumptions around, but I got questions. Why is that happening? And Austin's on the show. Austin, you're one of the people that have been talking about this, like this complex, this creator complex, and it's like, I don't know what's going on anymore. And people that should know the truth are kind of like, or not just know the truth, but they're like slightly deviating from it. I don't know. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I pretty much was describing it as an attempt to manifest and engineer socially this sort of new age ideological esoteric system of control in many ways, right? And I think that it's this occultism that's layered into the potential outcome as well. And I know that sounds strange, but I believe that this is really a manifestation of fulfilling this God hole within the modern structure of society itself, and really kind of creating this new age ideology where people will then begin to embrace this kind of conceptual outcome in a sort of way. and leave the age-old sentiment of religious doctrine and various conservative values in the past once and for all, and hopefully, I believe, not hopefully in my opinion, but clearly in the minds of the social engineers, I believe that they do truly want to usher in the dawning age of Aquarius, right? Like this legitimate kind of rebuilt international, global, systematic, structured, that really is this kind of. I know people have their qualms about New World Order, but it's obviously a term that they themselves utilize, and so it's nothing that I shy away from. But I will say that the way that I described it, because I covered the Disclosure Project whenever I did my episode on Project Bluebeam, and to me, just seeing those usual suspects, the Stephen Greers, right, who of the world, who are financed by the Rockefellers and legitimately, I mean, ever since Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds broadcast, that was a psychological operation to legitimately, gauge the aftermath and the fallout in regard to the psychological phenomena and how it really affected the public. And you had people, just farmers, who legitimately believed that the Martians were invading and picked up all their belongings and went to the local federal building and were thought that we were under attack from an extraterrestrial, and it's just hilarious to me because the way that I described it, though, I thought I was pretty just as far as I think that this still applies, and that basically comes in the form of questioning this new orthodoxy, right? A new age religion, as I mentioned. And I believe that this is kind of these layers of mind manipulation have been, undeniably sort of interwoven into the public consciousness at this point. And so I think this is all about a potential fulfillment of a manufactured crisis that was paired with this sophisticated, socially engineered prophecy. And I think that in itself really provides us with the path to understand these secret government programs as far back as Blue Book, where I can point to Alan Dulles being this is a brainchild of Alan Dulles, post World War II. They wanted to manipulate the minds of the public by utilizing this extraterrestrial threat. And that in itself, I think when you see how it runs perfectly in parallel with these government-sponsored disclosure projects and things of that nature, as far as these clandestine operations that very much like here's the thing with Bluebeam itself. If you actually read through it, they have the big space show in the sky, right? And it's hilarious.
Austin,
to me.
I gotta just say, somebody. Can you just read that note? What the hell is this?
This is I'm sorry to do this, Austin, but this
doesn't really ever happen.
This is so we've received a gift from the live audience. Is he in the chat? Shout out to Atma, one of the longtime homies and supporter of the show, for the fog machine. We've been gifted a fog machine. Just showed up here in the and it says there's a note on it that Matt has written, and he said, "Unbelievable! I want my life back." And
sorry, man.
This comes as an inside joke, sort of, from Matt's disdain for the 501c3 system, church system, and how they always have fog machines and laser lights, and now we have our very own fog machine, which is honestly incredible.
Leave that there.
Thank you so much, Atma. Dude, that's the coolest shit ever.
Very strange. You were talking about Alan Dulles.
Please.
What the hell, guys?
Oh my God.
Please go on, dude.
So
Alan Dulles.
You guys know about Werner von Braun, right? As far as okay, so essentially you have the Rockefellers and the Jesuits that very much, I believe, kind of manufactured the disclosure movement in general, and that in itself, I believe, is a huge red flag, and understanding that they had financed these research groups, essentially, that would provide this avenue of a sort of precedent, in many ways. But yeah, it looks like Wernher von Braun himself, right, who was very actively in regard to in World War II in Nazi Germany, like he was attending slave camps and legitimate rights as far as like I think it was I'll pull that because it's very interesting. He's actually present when one of the slaves were basically fucking tortured to death, which is sickening to actually witness that this individual had so much connections to, and he himself had ordered his execution in order to be this sort of example, if I remember correctly, which is fascinating to me. But you had
what really happened there, and I wonder if you would agree with this. It seems like the Nazi regime, they're steeped in the occult. They actually do discover this spiritual realm filled with these entities. They make contact one way or another, and then what seems to take place is a generational deception that is birthed out of the advent of NASA.
You see, this
Hollywood.
Is why it's so hard to explain to somebody like Matt. Like,
I know it's a lot of catching up.
And I'm talking about modern day Israel, but then the inception of modern day Israel comes in 1948, and right on the heels of the destruction of Nazi Germany,
Yep.
And
then Wernher von Braun and NASA's created, and the CIA starts
Operation Project Stargate.
Boom, 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 boom.
How do I explain to you 100 years
of deception?
Of deception.
Right.
Yeah. Orchestrated deception that seemingly gets us to the point where we are fully
we gotta
indoctrinated.
Look at this damn tweet from Timothy Alberino. This is the culmination of 100 years of
of 100 years of deception. Well, that is the thing. It's like we've been programmed by Hollywood, by NASA, by all this apparatus that springs forth, after Operation Paperclip, to accept these things that Aleister Crowley even interacted with, right, in the form of Lamb, to get us to the point where we're going to accept a large scale alien deception. So what the thing that gets me is what's coming. And a lot of people will say, and luckily not our audience because of who we're talking to, but a lot of people will say, why are you even focused on this thing? I don't think people realize how funded the disclosure is going to be, how cohesive the disclosure is going to be, how many experts are going to sing the same song on the topic of disclosure, and how, if that is truly going to come to pass, it will be one of the greatest lies ever orchestrated.
And see, when you read the Bible and it says that there will be like there will be a deception that'll fool the mass, it'll fool everybody. And you go, how the hell are you going to fool the entire church? I was like, well, let's look at how closely tied this like narrative is to the church, and not like to the biblical church, the body of Christ, to the modern 501c3.
Yeah. What did the Pope say? By the way, the Pope said he would baptize him.
But I'm talking about the establishment that is like basically owned by
who?
Israel.
Who? What?
I don't know.
Ones.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
It's crazy.
Why would you say something like that?
Because it's just so blatantly in your face all the time, right?
I don't think that's true.
It's very frustrating, man. And I'm trying to put together these pieces to exactly why and how to explain it to the common person that just wants to go to church and, learn, experience.
Sit in the fog machine. Have some laser lights.
Experience the Holy Spirit.
Listen to the songs. I don't know, dude. I really want to plug this thing in, by the way.
I want to plug it in
so bad. It's very frustrating. It does different colors on the fog. But Austin, from where you're sitting, having looked at so much high-level espionage,
also, can I just say?
Yeah.
I feel really bad that we're coming after Alberino like this.
No,
but I feel like it's just like I'm reading it and I'm perplexed, and I want to know more, and I want to know why.
Well, look,
I'm confused.
When you look at these, and we were talking about the what did you call it, the influencer industrial complex, which is one of the greatest. You look at the apparatus that's getting built up around disclosure. You look at the way that maybe certain influencers are starting to get ahead and sing the right tune. Does this not bear resemblance?
Austin Forbes, is that his name?
Austin Forbes, yeah.
He's one.
Dude.
I mean, it's a clear path. It's like, hey, no one's gonna listen to your anti-gravity stuff,
right?
But
But
sing this song,
$7,000.
Well, I
to
mean,
sing this song.
Maybe not even paying them, but maybe just sing this song. And then you'll see them do it, and you're like, this is to your detriment. It doesn't quite make sense.
But I think what Austin really has, is this intimate knowledge of how these systems work. He's looked at so many systems, 1,000-foot overview, and then an intimate,
By the way, we have 11 minutes on this. So
I know. But does it look to you, Austin, like one of these? Because so often these patterns repeat themselves. Mm-hmm. This looks like an op.
Oh yeah, no, that is my entire perspective on the Disclosure Project in general and the origin story behind it. They called it the battlefield of the mind, right? And I believe that this is legitimately how you kind of, perfectly, let's just say, divide. Let's separate, the notion as far as the spiritual context of what this fulfills in terms of a scientific component of how individuals can point to something that really becomes this honestly, it really becomes a faith, a sort of a factor involved in the extraterrestrial concept alone, right? You become a believer, an indoctrinated cult member to a certain degree, and I think I'm not at all denying the possibility, right? I again would say interdimensional is far more. I'm far more open-minded to that than some sort of. I'm not even certain. I don't believe we've ever penetrated the space, in terms of, I don't think we ever actually have gotten outside of the Van Allen belt, right? And I believe that, that alone, that's sort of what I was getting to in terms of Von Braun because of what was on his tombstone. I always found to be so fascinating, which is hilarious to me, especially considering the scientific kind of background of who this man was, and right, the father of modern rocketry. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The father of space travel, right? He was the father of many things, apparently, and also so this is fascinating to me, and something that I had discovered during that episode on Bluebeam, because I think it was in '58 whenever NASA was fully established by law, and then Wernher von Braun by 1960 becomes the first director. And he holds that position until 1970 for around 10 years. And then basically what's interesting to me, though, is that he had been exposed through being one of the paperclip Nazis, obviously, who was brought over with evidence proving he was even a member of Hitler's elite SS, which makes sense. And then you have multiple Holocaust survivors who identified von Braun directly as ordering the floggings of slave laborers who attempted an act of sabotage while being forced to work in the rocket program at the Mittelbaldora concentration camp, where 20,000 were reported to have died from illness, beatings, hangings, and intolerable working conditions. So he directly was, even a French prisoner, I guess, claimed that he stood by as prisoners were hanged by chains, suspended by cranes. So this is the father of modern rocketry in the space program. And he would die, I think, it was like by 1978 or 77, I think, is when he actually died from kidney cancer or something to that effect. And that is when he told, this is so hilarious, because the woman that is now the face of the Disclosure Project is a woman by the name of Dr. Carol Rosin. All right, she's a spook. There's no doubt in my mind. Like, she's 100%. I believe that the entire Disclosure Project can be directly traced back to the intelligence apparatus. And I believe that she herself would become, Carol Rosin was given the deathbed confession, allegedly, by von Braun. She's the individual who heard his deathbed confession, which is very interesting. And she served as the very first female executive of an aerospace company, working as corporate manager of Fairchild Industries. And so Dr. Carol Rosin was a spook who founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space. And it's just fascinating to me that clearly she is involved with projects directly linked back to that of these UFO whistleblowers that have CIA connections. And so you then begin to realize that it was, I believe, in 2013, there was a citizens hearing on the disclosure project, right? And this was all financed and put together and orchestrated by Lawrence Rockefeller. And so it makes sense that, the vast majority of these UFO-backed related projects just can be effectively traced directly to, the very, suspects that have perfectly orchestrated, these, let's just say the deliberate deception at play in the sort of modern paradigm that we even engage with this concept, kind of, this is how they set the table, right? It's the psychological operation aspect of these things and the human potential foundation. And there's so much connected to this that it seems like this is really a transhumanist agenda in certain ways as well. And that's why I think seeing that you have direct, like Stephen Bassett and various individuals like this who are legitimately financed by Jesuits connected to the Rockefellers directly as well, then it begins to make sense, because the Jesuit order comes up far too often in many of these circumstances. And it was the Bible verse, though, that I found to be one of the most fascinating aspects of what was, effectively on the tombstone of Werner von Braun, right? Yeah. And so it was apparently what he had put was Psalm 19:1, right?
God showeth his handiwork in the firmament, I believe is.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
Yep.
That alone, man. Come on, that's difficult too.
You know what's funny, Austin? I was just hanging out with a bunch of family.
That's a deathbed confession.
It is that, but I don't know how you dismiss that, any other way. But I'm hanging out with my family, and I'm kind of, saying this crazy stuff to them. And at one point, I was hit with. Well, I don't think that could be, because it's a secret that's too big and it would take too many people to, and everybody knows like people COVID? Can't keep a secret. And I'm just like, it's just such a classic response, like, oh, people can't keep a secret that big. And I go like, oh, if you're paying attention, they don't.
The ones that don't die.
And if you're looking, the secrets come out. You just have to be looking for them. I mean, yeah, sure, people have a hard time keeping secrets, but what does it matter if they release their secrets if you're not listening?
Oh man,
what happened? What's homeboy's name? Armstrong. Is that the guy that?
Oh yeah.
He's constantly like letting these little.
He's like punching reporters and stuff.
Well, no, that's the little girl that was just like, how come we haven't been to the moon again? And I swear he like leaned in and he goes, because you little slanted-eyed bitch. We never went there in the first place. And then he like backs up.
Dude, I will say,
it's not the bike guy. What's the dude's name? It's Armstrong, right? Neil Armstrong.
Yeah. I want to say Lance.
Neil Armstrong.
No, Lance is the bike guy, dude. Neil is I believe that's him. But anyway, yeah, it's just funny because whenever you're on the show, you do such a great job of showing all the details and the names and the places and the documents and the dates and all this stuff. And it's like, no, look, the secrets were kept. And if you're like Austin, you can do a pretty good job of getting to the point where it doesn't feel so secret anymore. It seems pretty obvious because there's always a paper trail. Always a paper trail.
No, I didn't mean to step on you there. I just
Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, that's it. I was just about to. So
the hell did I say?
Neil Armstrong, which
I said Lance Armstrong, so we're like,
well, I know the first dude on the moon was Armstrong or something. Neil, I think it was Neil Armstrong. Yeah, because it's A. That's why his name backwards is alien. Like Neil A. is alien backwards, which is stupid. But no, it was Buzz Aldrin.
He punched Bart Sabrell, is I believe the guy's name.
That's right.
Wasn't he? He was on Tinfoil Hat back in the day, I believe, a couple times, and he's a interesting guy, honestly. But I will say, he wrote a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, I think, is the book that he wrote. Yeah, and honestly, he's. I will say he's not the most reliable source. So something that I would just, as far as just I don't know. There are more just as far as prominent sources that I think are far more reliable, that are worthwhile and effectively kind of, I don't know, just pointing people to in terms of some sort of credible, avenue. But I'm not at all contending with much of what he has to say, because I do definitely agree with a lot of what he has said and shared in terms of the moon landing. But I will say it was hilarious the way that he approached Buzz Aldrin before he just straight up dapped him up in the street, which, hey man, I'll be honest, like if just some, an older gentleman who legitimately just, he doesn't have any time for this, or right? He's like, that's what it seemed like. Aldrin's just like, dude, I'm done with it. I don't give a shit if we win or not. like that's kind of how he seems, to be honest. And really many of the actual astronauts who effectively were intended to believe made the spacewalk right on the moon, I think they were really, I don't know how read in they were on the ultimate outcome of things. And you know what I mean? I think it's far more efficient if you keep things compartmentalized in terms of the operation anyway, let alone the rotary telephone call to the moon directly.
That was the best.
Come on, what are we doing here?
Do you know what was like really compartmentalized? Columbine.
Oh my God. Hold on. Beautiful segue, but give me one brief moment before we do that, because there were two examples I had to tell you as far as we had been discussing the Disclosure Project, and basically there's evidence that really I think reinforces a lot of what I was attempting to say, which essentially is just my perspective on disclosure and the extraterrestrial phenomena truly being, and the UFO flying disc craze, all of it. Essentially being this manufactured operation from really psychological operation that was the brainchild of Alan Dulles in more ways than one. And we have documentation and legitimate evidence that we can point to. For example, there was an individual by the name of Walter Bedell Smith, who was the CIA director during the 1950s. And basically, there was an internal document that was effectively presented to the Psychology Strategy Board of the CIA in 1951 or 1952, and it says, today we are transmitting to the National Security Council a proposal in which it is concluded that the problems associated with unidentified flying objects appear to have implications for psychological warfare, as well as for intelligence and intelligence operations. I suggest that we discuss at an early board meeting the possible offensive and defensive utilization of these phenomena for psychological warfare purposes. So that's one beautiful example, right, in many ways. And then also you have the radar deception that played out as far as the manipulation of what they called the battlefield of the mind. And there was an essay that was written by this man by the name, he was a leading chemical engineer, right, who worked on the Manhattan Project, and his name was Dr. Leon Davidson, and he himself would become one of the leading UFO investigators during the Cold War. And he writes an essay in 1959 that he titled CIA plus ECM equals UFOs, How to Cause a Radar Sighting. And he states, I contend that since 1951, the CIA has caused or sponsored saucer sightings for its own purposes. By shrewd psychological manipulation, a series of, quote, normal events has been served up so as to appear as quite convincing evidence of extraterrestrial UFOs. So that's another ridiculous example. And then we have Lord Mountbatten, of all people, who's a member of the Anglo-Irish Vice Ring, coming out and making statements about unity, and Fabian socialists who are legitimately doing this very same thing, right, who are attempting to present this as a collectivist philosophy, right, this new age mindset of how we could unite against the common enemy, an outside threat, which then Reagan later would sort of parrot and reinforce in many ways as well. But this was as early as the early 1900s, 1917. These statements are being made. And then one final statement that I want to make before we make that hard segue is basically that Alan Dulles became actively involved by 1950 with the CIA work on flying saucers and UFOs. And he allegedly saw, this is according to an open letter from 1962 that was written in regard to mass psychological warfare, right? In regard to UFOs, yes, and the CIA. And American technology being utilized for these purposes, twofold purpose, allegedly. And so it was during 1950 when Alan Dulles allegedly became actively involved with this CIA work on UFOs and saw the psychological impact with which they had. So he started a plan to build them up as a psychological warfare weapon. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then
now
Project Blue Book.
Something crazier too. So the Book of Enoch was found in 1773, the first complete copy in Ethiopia, but they found they basically verified it among the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947. So like 1947, 1948 to 1950.
That's perfect timing, buddy.
Yeah, all this stuff happens, but it's like it doesn't delegitimize the book because it's been around for years before that, and they say it's written in like the 1st century, but it's I guess it's solidified in that in its legitimacy that like, oh look, we found it now, but it happens in right around this time where all this stuff is going down.
That is interesting too, because the guy from what the hell is his name from?
Like that book's found, Israel's founded, and then boom, like we continue with every other project. We have NASA afterward, like the space.
But what's this guy from Ancient Aliens that he did a cover of the Book of Enoch, The Return of the Gods. It was I forget what the hell his name is, but he looks at it strictly through this sort of technological advanced civilization angle.
Jonathan Kahn?
No, not Jonathan Kahn. Book of the Return of the Gods. Enoch, The Return of the Gods comes from one of the guys that was big on Ancient Aliens. And I'm not saying that he's part of the op, but like you can see the way that you could use Enoch to bridge into this alien narrative, and you can kind of massage it so that it's strictly technology, strictly space brethren. Oh, it's Eric Von Daniken. It's actually right by your head. The second one from the bottom, Eric Von Daniken. So that's a very interesting kind of. I mean, he's a big character, right? And he's got a lot of influence within this community. And so, yeah, Return of the Gods, Enoch, and the Return of the Gods. And I can see this like constant effort for this kind of Ancient Aliens take to reach into this. And there's minor deviations, and if they're fundamental to the story, and you deviate in that way, well, then it changes the whole nature of the story.
It's a very dangerous combination. What's happening here, because Austin is like debunking this from this like almost like state level, these government contracts and forms and dates, and we're kind of coming at it from this like biblical perspective or even extra biblical perspective. It's very interesting.
That's the thing, and we can get off of it after this, but what I will say is it's very obvious that there is a government component to the whole thing, right? Like if you look into the presence of military in all of these instances, it's saturated. How often does somebody have an alien abduction experience and there's also military personnel? Like the idea of reverse engineering, the idea of psychological operations, the idea of deploying, mind control, or deploying sufficiently advanced technology in order to create a situation that creates an opening for military intelligence to then fill the void, right? Let's just say.
Well, I think the question I'm having now is like, where does the deception begin? Where does the truth start? Because I personally believe that there is something true about this.
Yeah, and I could see Zach is saying that talk about Jack Parsons and Jet Propulsion Laboratories, like the subcontractor.
Can't.
No, but it's very, very obvious. There is a huge
have to have him on again.
There's a human element to this. But it's one of the things I like that Merkel says, where he looks at it and he goes, yeah, all of the above. There's military intelligence. There's demonic entities involved. There's all of this. There's the human element. It's very muddled and messy
on purpose,
and there is a psychological operation that has been hatched upon the people for generations now, since that conservatively the 50s, to get us to believe a certain thing about these entities, and which is why it's frustrating whenever people that have a lot of influence within this community that seem to be close to the disclosure are saying that if you think this is demons, you're a retard. And it's like, dude, you can't remove that. And number one, you're straw manning it, you're reducing it. It's not that simple, and you can't remove that. And why aren't you talking to the people that have actually experienced this? That's my thing. There's people that are in the know who have had real experiences, who are tied up with guys like L.A. Marzulli, who have a piece of this puzzle that's huge. And it seems to me like you're trying to omit a piece of the puzzle.
Seems like they're Schofield Bibling the Book of Enoch, which is very bizarre to me. I don't like.
Well, either way, Columbine.
Yeah,
not as good as your segue. Not as good as your segue.
We just completely destroyed any possible invitations in the future, but that's fine. Needed to be said.
Needed to be said.
I just want to know. Like,
very concerned.
If you do see this, I want to know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What do we like? What's happening? Because if I can get like a legitimate explanation that is satisfactory, in my opinion, then cool, man. Because I love the work that these guys do, but
I'm not going to let it go either. For the audience, I spent quite a bit of time talking to my family over Thanksgiving, and I got my wife, and I got a lot of information in regards to the things that my grandmother experienced before she passed away since childhood, and it's just Karen Wilkinson's story. It's just Karen Wilkinson's story. Over and over again. She experienced this intimately, and I think it ruined her. It ruined her, and she ended up passing away very young because of alcohol-related issues, and she couldn't figure out, and it led her down spiritually bankrupt paths, and just, all this chaos, and it starts from when she's a child, and all these abductions experiences.
Is the thing, and I'm sorry to like continue to detract from what we came here to talk about, but it's like the alien abduction encounters, they closely resemble demonic encounters, and demonic encounters like always lead to paths of destruction. You'll see people that are on paths of destruction that are clear demonic encounters, but they can't diagnose it because they don't have the verbiage, or maybe they're just too like afraid to look at it directly, or maybe they haven't like done this research or came across what's happening. And it's like, it's important that we link these things together. And then when you start to throw the government influence into there, it gets super nefarious. We can't let it go.
No, I'm not letting it go. I've got a little bit of a vendetta now, but please, let's well, we're straying into part 3 now.
Right. Well, and for the record, I just want it to be known that I'm not at all denying the spiritual conceptual outcome here in terms of the in many ways, I believe that the state will always implement a sort of at least a manipulation of prophecy in certain ways, right? In terms of the spiritual nature of how you can legitimately, let's say, misdirect the public. And I think that they will always attempt to utilize ideological groups, right, of any kind, and kind of infiltrate with various individuals who will effectively, perform the mind manipulation necessary in that field, right, or however you want to describe it. But I will say that in no way am I denying right, this spiritual manipulation that I think is being conducted, and knowingly. I think it's a sinister and deliberate, a sort of attempt to really leverage and exploit these lower frequency individuals who aren't quite, engaging with the proper interpretation of things in terms of, just as far as like, I legitimately believe that, and someone in the chat had mentioned the Jet Proportion Laboratory and things of that nature. Yeah, I mean, Jack Parsons and the Pasadena Lodge, right, in regard to the connection to L. Ron Hubbard, and he's out there performing the Babylon working sex ritual in the desert, with which is legitimately sex magic, right? And the Thelemic goddess of Babylon that they're trying to manifest and incarnate, right? Using Jack Parsons' wife at the time, who L. Ron Hubbard runs away with, right? Which is just, the whole thing is drenched in occultism, and also, I mean, there was a crazy story about this individual. I'm talking like just a few years back, went on Joe Rogan, and he was called the Python Cowboy. You remember that guy? And basically he had, I had watched it. He was like a conservationist and would go out and was wrangling pythons essentially to help conserve, right, the what's it called? The Florida Everglades. Okay. And so he essentially had gone out, he had to receive access and essentially be given access and approved to visit this old jet propulsion laboratory black site from the Cold War. And so he had to gain access by the local government in order to even access this area geographically. And it was so far deep into the Everglades. And so he inevitably finds the actual laboratory itself, which is kind of broken down, but still seems like people are effectively utilizing it to some extent for some reason or another. And then he begins to basically, I'm pretty sure he had a couple of guys with him who were helping him kind of film things and things of that nature, because he has his own show that he was trying to do. But I thought it was interesting because at the very least, he stumbles upon a ritual, sort of blood ritual site, right? This occult site that is utilizing the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, this broken down missile manufacturer production facility that Jack Parsons himself had a connection to, which is fascinating because apparently this had long-standing ties to occult rituals. And so this individual had just kind of stumbled onto what he viewed as there was even this sort of crazy like Latin written in blood on the ground surrounding what looked like a sort of funeral pyre that had a baby doll just sitting at the center of it. And it looked as if one of the eyes had been plucked out strategically in the ritual itself, which is very, I think it was the left eye, which that in itself is kind of occultic in nature and the symbolic aspect of it. But there was a scarlet snake that he discovered that was like slithering through its eye hole and like was wrapped around the neck of the baby doll whenever he discovered it. And in Latin, I believe the phrases were like "turn back," or there were a few different phrases that were written on the ground as he's like approaching this area. And yeah, it was very interesting to me because the scarlet snake allegedly was bleeding from the anus, and he himself had claimed he had never seen this throughout the course of his lifetime and experience with these just snakes in general. But yeah, that alone reminded me of how they utilize snakes in some of these abuse networks, which is fascinating as well. Talk about bestiality in the Dutroux network. Yeah, in the Dutroux network, part of the abuse. Apparently, he would take around a scarlet snake and use it to sexually abuse the victims. And I'm talking the most sinister things you could read, but that's what it reminded me of at a certain extent. And so he continues to follow the tracks of the blood inside right after he finds this baby doll, and he goes inside and he sees this sort of blood effigy on the wall. And in a neighboring room is this kind of sleeping bag, which looks like there's a lump, some potentially a body, right, is how he described it. But he didn't go that far. After he found that, he basically freaked out and left and called the authorities. But what he had discovered inside was, it seemed like there were all these crazy symbols on the walls that looked like they were written in blood. And then there was a chair in the center of the room. And it looked like this was where the sacrifice had taken place, because there was a pool of blood under the chair. And then on the wall was like nailed to the wall was a dress that looked like a dress of a young, like 6-year-old. Like it definitely was not an old, it seemed like a very young child's, clothing, obviously. And it looked as if it had blood on it as well. And it was nailed to the wall. So it did seem as if, I think he even mentioned the fact that she was only 9 was written on the wall in blood, right?
Jeez.
And so this is an old Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the Florida Everglades that Jack Parsons used to apparently actively engage in occult rituals there, right? And so for this to still be an active site for legitimate occult blood rituals, that makes a lot of sense, to be honest, because I think a lot of these areas are geographically utilized in this sort of way. And, I would imagine the way that I see so many of these occult networks function you have this dynastic kind of generational family dynamic, right? Where they keep it in the family. You're initiated once and for all, essentially, and based on your genealogy, you're also tapped into higher echelons of leadership, but potentially as well for the network itself. And that is kind of how some of them function. But again, I kind of butchered that entire presentation, but I will say it's worth going back and reading.
That's worth going into. I mean, Nathaniel Gillis talks about being at some of these like higher up disclosure experts' houses in their house parties, and they're like, "Hey, you want to see something?" And they show him a shrine in their closet to an old god, and he's like, "I thought we were doing aliens," and they're like, "Yeah." It's like, so it's kind of like the same.
It is the same shit.
This overlap is just wild, dude.
It's the same shit.
And we have distracted again successfully.
Unbelievable.
From what you want to talk about.
Can I shout out RJ real quick, because RJ
of course
popped in the room.
RJ Fool?
I don't know if it. No. That's JR Fool. That's
JR
different.
Fool.
But RJ's been a long time fan of ours, and he stopped by and he took a selfie in here.
Yeah.
And he's hanging out right now, and he saw the Can Confirm fog machine is in there. There we go. RJ says, "You guys are my Kardashian and Justin Bieber's."
Oh my gosh,
stop it. Unbelievable. Not FJ Fool. FJ Fool is a different guy. So okay, now, man, how the hell do we pick up the pieces of Columbine after that?
Oh, I got you, buddy. And I will say that demonic possession, right? Essentially just considering the notion that because I discovered this potentially being a factor in regard to monarch mind control, right? And so if we consider Eric Harris potentially being a victim of legitimate, sophisticated methods of behavioral modification experimentation at Plattsburgh Air Force Base, then I wouldn't at all leave it outside the realm of possibility in terms of the just understanding how mind control sort of manifests inside the fractured mind of the victim. And I think that even the symbolic nature of the butterfly, which I think was fascinating, because I was reading basically this insane breakdown by Ron Patton he had written on Project Monarch, and it basically discusses the 149 sub-projects and various things, right? Project Spellbinder and these various sub-projects that I wasn't even aware of, to be honest, for the longest time. But there's this layered occult symbolism that seems to involve, let's just say, like the true meaning of psyche is alleged to be considered soul, right? And so basically, it's basically what he was kind of referencing is the soul and the butterfly symbolic nature of the occultism in terms of Monarch, right? Is that human souls become like butterflies while searching for a new reincarnation. This is what some of these individuals who practice esoteric occult values legitimately, allegedly believe in. Now, that's interesting in terms of one of the potential, applications for the symbolic nature of things. But also,
in your research, have you found this idea that the wings of the butterfly represent the hemispheres of the brain? And
yes,
because it seems that hemi-syncing is a huge component of the MK Ultra program and really any of these programs. It's
CE5.
CE5 is huge. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem right now. But yeah, that's the way that I always interpreted it. Was it almost looks like the image of the brain, although the wings might be considered inverted or whatever. But it's the hemispheres of the brain.
Yeah, that's definitely it's not at all coincidental, whatsoever. And as well as, they claim sort of that the butterfly symbol itself is kind of the symbol of metamorphosis, right? The transformation, and basically this is representing, from the caterpillar to the cocoon to the butterfly in a sort of way, from dormancy and inactivity to the new creation. And that alone is almost like playing God, right? And I think that there's so much of that and again, I see it within the context of Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set and the Black Flame, which is this, ridiculous sort of self-deification, right? Where in many ways you kind of reject God because you view yourself as legitimately, just as far as having a plausible avenue to becoming a god on your own right, in your own right. And I think that in itself is a huge issue with the New Age occult esoteric ideology, because it is a way in which you kind of subvert the moral values and the core values of the West. And that is in no way coincidence, but also allegedly the migratory patterns of butterflies plays into, as far as some of the species being fairly unique, plays into a little bit of the symbolic representation. But the claim was that essentially this is a Gnostic idea, right, in terms of the philosophy and behind it, and the butterfly was a symbol of corrupt flesh. So the angel of death, right, is basically you have this Gnostic artwork which portrays crushing a butterfly, and that in itself seems to be this sort of symbol of again, they're recreating their own sort of let's just say personality through the marionette syndrome and this puppet that is now perfectly on a string. And I think that is where I think we have this perfect window into the puppet masters and how they utilize this operational kind of strategy and strategic outcome to their benefit. But this is within the also, I think the therapists, just as far as the conditioning, these responses within the subconscious minds of the victims, this is a huge issue that people aren't quite understanding perfectly, and because of the level of dissociation involved, and I think they integrate occultism and these occult philosophies within the concept of the basically monarch mind control, but this is, anyway, the entire reason that I'm even discussing this is because I wanted to bridge it into the Kabbalistic mysticism and these various themes that seem to perfectly represent that of whenever individual victims are essentially enduring the effects of the dissociative identity disorder. They are basically through the traumatic, implementation of the just as far as the enhanced trauma that fractures the subconscious mind and the neural pathways, that in itself is essentially demonic possession, is what I was reading, and that basically this really how the programming kind of manifests through the trauma in itself within the victim is basically how they were essentially kind of claiming that the alters and triggers were really a victimization of the body and soul, right? So you have this complex, let's say, the way that he described it was a computer program, as far as Ron Patton, when I was reading it. And it was just fascinating, again, because he's utilizing this strange, unique, descriptive way of implementing a spiritual component to mind control that I think far too many people are willing to just, dismiss at face value and not legitimately consider. And that I do find to be a real issue in terms of not remaining open-minded to the potential outcome here, and this being some sort of ancient strategy at play that they've been relying upon. Because what is, the perfect chemical formula, right, of pharmaceuticals that they can at least apply in the perfect recipe in that sort of way? I mean, it's just alchemy, right, in a certain sense. And so just understanding the kind of terminology that has evolved over time, it doesn't necessarily make it any different than what it once was, which hypnotism and these various sophisticated methods that are a part of the perfect recipe, play into the notion that I definitely believe that you're talking about assigning a specific because it's fascinating, honestly, as far as the altars and how they can assign specific deities to the altars. And this is what they're claiming throughout the process, is that you can become possessed by some sort of unique form of demon that has been almost manufactured in a lab in a sort of way, right? And it will have you sort of just inherently react in a way that is preordained, and that in itself is allegedly, kind of provoked and evoked from that very sort of sentient, kind of, I don't know. It's difficult to kind of put into the proper terminology as far as just understanding that is potential, the possibility of demonic possession in regard to dissociative identity disorder. But I do believe that the legitimate mind manipulators have I think they engage in these spiritual terms in as far as the mind control aspect of things. And I think
that's what's strange, is that we exist in a time right now where we have all this information, how to create a dissociative state in an individual through trauma, what to do with that dissociative state once you've achieved it, different levels of programmability, suggestibility, and then we get into the real fringe topics of potentially unlocking, let's say, what would be called, by the woo-woo community, is like latent psychic ability, which is certainly something that, these intelligence agencies have been interested in. At the least, you could say that. Stranger Things is a show that sort of fictionalizes it, makes it fantasy, makes it fantastic.
Right.
But this is all based off of real programs, and there are those out there who study psychic phenomenon. It's been popularized recently within the telepathy tapes. And on this show, we talk about the connection between these non-speaking autistic children being traumatized. It's traumatic to have no agency over your body. You have no recourse but to disassociate. And when you do that, what emerges? Well, would you look at that? Telepathic ability. So,
right.
But what's really fascinating to me is that these are things that ancient people have known for the longest time and have practiced for the longest time. And we went through a stage of ridicule, sort of, where these things were sort of removed from our materialistic paradigm that we exist in right now. We're being reintroduced this concept of spirituality, and we're adding vocabulary to it and a scientific understanding, although we still struggle to understand all of it. I wonder how much really the for lack of a better term, elites do understand about this. And you find that our vocabulary, let's say interdimensionality or interdimensional travel, we were talking about that earlier. The Bible has said for some time, and you can go to these other, if for some of the listeners out there, the Bible is too charged of a word and you recoil from that. Well, you need only look at any of these ancient mythologies, although I don't think that they're mythos, from any group, and they would have had a spiritual realm, a heavenly realm, an underworld, right? These have always existed in some way, shape, or form. We just give ourselves a tremendous pat on the back when we coin it differently. And so, for example, Stranger Things has the upside down. That's the underworld. Every possible mythology has had an underworld in it in some way, shape, or form. So I just, it's strange to me right now because we're shucking off a lot of sort of ancient terminology associated with this thing or that thing, whether it's fallen angels or God or any of these things, and people will recoil at that only to clasp onto just a newer terminology that describes virtually the exact same thing. I was driving with my son the other day.
I have a feeling we're not going to do.
No. I mean, we are still talking about the same thing. But my son is in the back seat and he's like, "What do you think about the idea of simulation theory?" which is another example of us in our profound understanding and our scientific materialistic paradigm trying to assign a terminology and a definition to a thing that ancient people have already had under wraps for quite some time. And it's like, what do you mean to say? You mean to say that this realm was designed? That there's a creator to this? That there's something that exists outside of this? Profound. So it's I don't know. It's strange to me. And I think that over and over again, I do find that the ancients, some better than others, had a much better understanding and grasp of these things that we are wrestling with right now. And that, our own intelligence agencies have decided to meddle with. And what are they using? They're using altars. They're using, trauma and sacrifice and ritual and ceremony and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on.
And
nothing new under the sun.
Though, through the implementation of these altars, I believe that they are playing on the duality, right? The spiritual duality that honestly is just, well conditioned. I think it's inherent within us, right? The good and evil, right? In terms of just understanding the dual nature of right, kind of it's the interwoven kind of playing the two on an axis within the subconscious mind of the victim. And that's how it's effectively described in many ways. And the reason why I think there's a spiritual component is because the way that the internal structured system of the altars was effectively kind of presented was and you kind of mentioned the fact that right within the system it's shaped like a double helix sort of, and right in terms of there's even 7 levels allegedly, which reminded me of the sevenfold path and right, and this
seventh God exists within the seventh heaven.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, but how so many of these occult ideologies play on that very same concept. And so the sevenfold path is this hermetic principle. It's just like it's these theosophical notions that again are very much let's just say have a far-ranging history in terms of the applications that you can point to and all throughout human history and how it's affected and influenced the outcome in many ways. And so I just see that how it was described as a computer program, right, is very interesting because it was essentially through the altars being effectively implemented. It's an internal programmer that's overseeing essentially the demons. Or as they describe them as gatekeepers. Now that's interesting. And especially because they grant or deny entry into these different rooms in the subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And so also considering the level of, through DID and multiple personality disorder, many of the victims will effectively remain at this specific age whenever one of their altars are triggered, right? And they'll be, for example, Regina Louf was the whore, right? And she was perfectly submissive in every way and remained like at like a 6-year-old IQ sort of, and also even had different handwriting and spoke differently whenever one of each of these altars was engaged and triggered.
Which,
so that
by the way, is you will find the same thing in schizophrenia.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Which it stands to reason. I still don't effectively believe we understand what schizophrenia is. As far as just the general public being able to perfectly define the effect that and where it comes from exactly. Mm-hmm. Because there's this guy down at El Pollo Loco, man, that he's straight up having conversations with himself. It's, clearly he's talking to someone that he believes is there allegedly, and that's, it's just something that is hard to conceptualize, for anyone who obviously isn't plagued with some sort of psychological disorder of some kind. But how much of this is naturally occurring? How much of this is, some sort of, let's just say an inherent disadvantage due to a genetic defect of some kind. You never know. These things do happen, but the notion of these gatekeepers, right, and these demons that are truly what they refer to as, they are effectively the individuals who are orchestrating which altar is triggered through the programming methods. And that's fascinating, and also it seems to play into the Kabbalistic tree of life, right? These internal images that are predominantly seen by victims or survivors, and so they claim that trees are very frequent in this imagery, as well as, and so they claim like the Kabbalistic tree of life with the joining root systems is a great way to describe it, right? Infinity loops, ancient symbols and letters, spider webs, mirrors or glass shattering, mass, castles. Now that makes sense. Mass, because Kathy O'Brien always spoke about how her father, right, who had been trained by the Catholic clergy after he had been busted for child pornography and sexually abusing children, he was essentially given an offer he couldn't refuse, right? It's like, we bring you into the network and you essentially become a controlled asset within that context. And therefore, you provide us with a sort of, just a vital resource and avenue for the overall enterprise itself, which again is usually comes in the form of, you will now be one of the trauma abusers who implement the DID, or you will also help procure other victims through that process due to your sexual proclivities that you want to obviously engage in and have insulate yourself from accountability from as well. And so typically that's how it plays out. But the way that she described it is that once he accepted, right, to avoid any sort of legal consequences, he was taken to a facility in Boston, Massachusetts, with members of the Catholic clergy and trained in these sophisticated sort of behavioral modification experimentation methods. And then he was basically, he went back home and he effectively practiced these methods on his 5-year-old daughter, who was named Kathy O'Brien, right? And she told stories of her own father wearing a mask while he sexually abused her at the age of 5. And, it's just like to imagine the level of how much that might psychologically disrupt you, in terms of, not even being able to see the facial expressions of the person who is sexually abusing you. I don't know how that might affect the mind or the subconscious mind even of a young child, but yeah, it's one of those things you don't even want to understand. You know what I mean? At a certain point.
That was for my son when we were in New York. I mean, obviously nothing like that happened, but it was like during COVID, so everyone's wearing a mask, and he was severely developmentally delayed, large in part to the mask. You can't see people's reactions. You can't see their when they're pronouncing words, when they're happy, sad, whatever it is. So he's kind of like living in this state where he's seeing mom and dad, but that's not really enough to judge everything else around you. That's a big impotence for me to just bounce, like just leave New York. But yeah, there's a developmental delay and a stunting, a retardation of the child's psyche by just covering, I mean, that's covering the bottom half. So imagine the eyes as well, because there's a lot of emotion and intent described in the eyes. So man, that's hard. That's serious stuff, dude.
Absolutely, buddy. And I think so much of this as well has to do with, bloodlines, right? This genetic aspect of these generational satanic pedophiles. Like, I legitimately, at this point, I believe that genealogy and bloodlines effectively matter more than we can truly kind of comprehend, just as average individuals who obviously don't stand to gain from any sort of long-standing sort of familial prominence of some kind that we can rely on. But still, we're talking incest in order to create these sort of I think it's one way to distance yourself from the victim. It's, in terms of if you have a breeding experiment or a breeding program where you can effectively provide undocumented children, then settle them with families, even if they are genetically, let's say, actually family members of the parents themselves. If you were a test tube baby, then you're somewhat desensitized or at least separated from the outcome in a sort of way, because you're not directly kind of relating to the child as if it were your own in a sort of sense. And I think that in itself might help really provide the, that sort of avenue of abuse where it becomes far easier for individuals who are among the initiated in the family dynamics of these generational networks and abusers, that it does seem as if there's essentially truth to the notion that this is one way where you could legitimately separate yourself from, let's say, how do parents sacrifice their own children, right? Which people will it's hard to understand, but at the same time, I think it's something that we're not meant to conceptually be able to interpret in the right way, because we're not among the initiated. This is a long-standing structured system that they have sort of exploited for their own benefit for far too long. And so understanding that there is a legitimate, and by the way, this comes in the form of you hold a higher loyalty to the organization itself, to the network, to the philosophy behind what you stand for in regard to your initiation. It is more of I kind of saw this come to fruition in terms of a recent film that I watched called One Battle After Another, which is obviously a sort of Antifa porn in a way. It's kind of Antifa propaganda for progressives in a way, to where it really leads, I think the ultimate conclusion is basically that really violence is the only solution, and I think that in itself is a huge red flag as far as the overall moral values behind the film itself. But I will say that it's a hilarious film. It's made very well. I think one of my favorite directors, and really, it's Sean Penn's character is like Colonel Lockjaw, or I believe is his name, and it's really an interesting take on, let's just say, he's a part of a fraternal organization called the Christmas Adventurers Club, and they're very overly concerned with prioritizing racial purification. Right. And so it's interesting because he's in charge at the beginning of the film. He's in charge of this immigration detainment facility on the border between Mexico and the U.S. And so they are instantly playing into this radicalized leftist, really kind of mercenary militia of some kind that is more they're called the French 75, right, is what they go by in the film. And essentially they're trying to free the immigrants from the fascist, you see what I mean? This is anti-fascist propaganda, but at the same time, it's very well done. And there are moments that I think you can appreciate and kind of interpret things for yourself, and not necessarily follow the path that they are laying down in terms of the groundwork of this, ultimate propagandistic conclusion they hope you take from the film. When in reality, I think it provides us with a window into kind of how power functions in a certain way. And so this individual, Sean Penn, basically has a fetish, right? Because this is a taboo in terms of his sexual interest being due to his legitimate racism in terms of he's a racist, obviously. Like he legitimately, as far as Sean Penn's character, he's very overly militaristic. He's in charge of immigration domestically within the U.S. And he essentially was running this immigration detention center right at the beginning of the film. And so this black girl, basically, who's Leonardo DiCaprio's love interest in the film, she's running this group of the French 75, this radical leftist just, again, it's sort of a militia of some kind, but it's just some kind of political organization that's attempting to create domestic tension, you know what I mean, to essentially provide a solution to the system itself, when in reality they're just bombing banks and healthcare facilities and things of that nature, right? It's like, what are you actually accomplishing, and
burning down your own city sounds familiar.
Exactly. but the point being is that basically he has this, Sean Penn's character has this sexual interaction with this black revolutionary at the beginning of the film, and I guess he impregnates her, right? And so as he's tapped to become an exclusive member of the Christmas Adventurers Club, the fraternal organization of powerful influence, very much concerned with racial, as I mentioned, purification. Yeah, they're doing an extensive background check on him personally, and so he finds out that effectively he impregnated that girl back in the day, and because she went into protective custody basically and ratted everyone out, which I loved the hypocrisy, because she was kind of presented as like, I don't know, sort of a hero in a way, as far as the black revolutionary radical. And then she instantly betrays everyone and rats them all out and has sex with Colonel Lockjaw and gets impregnated and just bails, after having the kid. And so Leo's strapped with this young black kid that isn't even his, right? Unbeknownst to him. But obviously years later, like 16 years later, Colonel Lockjaw is tapped to this, become a member of this secret society. And so he finds out they're doing this, this crucial background check. And so he wants to tie off loose ends. And so he finds out he gets the intelligence of where this girl had effectively, found, just as far as where she was at this point geographically. And then he says, give me a pretext to launch essentially an immigration raid in that area. And so he goes in and he starts raiding, like, let's say the local Chick-fil-A or some shit. And like he ends up even sending one of his security forces, of immigration security, the ICE, basically goes to the local high school. And and they kind of shut down the prom and everything, which is hilarious. But anyway, the point being is that he legitimately held this potential membership of the secret society as far more of an honor than even being that girl's father. Yeah. Right. And I think that just was sort of the overall point that I was attempting to make there, because it really, I think, provided another window into, and it was hilarious too, because the membership of the higher echelon of the Christmas Adventurers Club actually found all of this out about Sean Penn's character, and then hired a hitman and sent him to just go effectively execute him and his character, and he failed. And so Sean Penn is still somehow alive and inevitably has a interaction with the leadership, thinking that he was going to be accepted into the Christmas Adventurers Club. And by the way, it led to one of the most entertaining and hilarious scenes that I have ever witnessed in cinematic history. And I have to actually share it with you. It's only 2 minutes. And now that I provided all the context, I think you both will laugh.
What's the name of the movie?
It's called One Battle After Another.
One Battle After Another. Okay.
And it's on, here we go. I got it right here. Dude, I'm telling you right now, it is worthwhile and going to watch just for this scene alone. And it's only 1 minute and 9 seconds, actually. Perfect. But it's just imagine if you're in some sort of interview process and you think
this is after he was
after they tried to kill him. Yes.
Yeah, dude, that's Sean Penn.
This movie looks
I think I
awesome.
saw you post this and I checked this out. All right, cool. Let it rip.
I was once raped in reverse.
Raped in reverse? Could you explain how that might work for us, Colonel Lockjaw?
The enemy employed deception. I was drugged. And while unconscious, my brain was not working. But my power was, and I believe it was taken advantage of.
What kind of proof do you have? If you were unconscious, how do you know this to be true?
I don't know it to be true, but I suspect it. When I awoke, there was sensitivity in a private place, and there was some residue of an interaction.
Interaction?
I believe she was a sperm thief.
A semen demon.
That's correct.
Colonel Lockjaw, what would be the purpose of the enemy raping you in reverse?
They saw the power of my mind and body. They desired it.
That's honestly
said,
an incredible scene. That's an incredible scene, though. I love that. I did see that. You posted it, and I was like, what the fuck am I watching? But it was really funny.
It kills me. And it was his justification, right, for why he engaged in that taboo sexual interaction with a black revolutionary, which is just, it was hilarious in context, obviously, and really the film itself, I think, is one of Leonardo DiCaprio's most kind of humorous characters that he ever played, you know. But there was one moment as well where basically he goes in to speak to the teacher of his student, or I mean of his daughter, and she's basically 16 at the time, so she's freshman, or I mean a sophomore, probably maybe junior in high school, and so he goes and he talks to the history teacher. And clearly this is from a leftist perspective, you know, so it's a little bit more, he's mentioning a lot of fucking slave owners up there on the wall, you know what I mean? Like as far as all the ex-presidents and stuff like that. But still, whenever he's told by the teacher that his daughter's actually, she's doing very well in her schoolwork and all her studies. And he basically starts crying. And then he tries to like save face and collect himself by claiming that it was, if you see me crying, it's out of joy. And he's like the most miserable person on earth, because obviously the notion is she's doing well in history class. So this is a huge problem, and effectively runs in opposition to all of my core principles, which just who I am personally and how much I hold disdain for public school.
That's how I'd feel too.
Yeah. When did this come out? Because I thought, for some reason, I thought you were talking about something old. That does not look old.
No, yeah, just it was Paul Thomas Anderson's new film. He did actually my favorite film ever, probably Inherent Vice, with Joaquin Phoenix and Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro, and that's another amazing movie because it's about a COINTELPRO, you know, and it's very, very strange and utilizing, let's say white supremacist organizations, biker clubs, things like that, to run plausible deniability cutouts on behalf of the intelligence apparatus in the moment and pursue the agenda on behalf of the powers that be. And then also how to utilize like this. They needed basically someone who wasn't Jewish to run one of the casinos on the Strip, right? They needed an Anglo-American to basically take charge of one of the casinos. So they implemented or they installed one of their own puppets, right? Mickey Wolfman is the character in Inherent Vice, who's like this real estate mogul type of individual. But again, it's like, I think any sort of plot line that provides you with a realistic window into how power truly functions, I think that's valuable, right?
Dude,
and
I was seeing the same thing in well, obviously in Stranger Things. We brought it up earlier, but I'm watching the what the heck was it? The new season of it, and
man, it's just riddled with.
I thought it was going to be super gay. It turns out it's
kind of is.
It's pretty good so far. I didn't mind it. I liked when they're trying to keep contact with, spoiler alert, guys, they're trying to keep contact with Hopper while he's in the underworld in the Upside Down. And how are they doing it? They're doing it through frequency. So they're trying to tune this receiver to the same frequency that he's operating on, even though he's in this other realm. And they're still managing to keep contact with him. And even my wife was just like, my wife. Even she was like, oh, there's the frequency bit. I was like, that's it, dude. That's it. So they and it's all about trauma. And basically these children experiencing trauma, and then what does it do? It continually puts them deeper into contact with this lower spiritual realm, and then of course the military is involved in all this, so it's all telling you right on its face a little gay. There was some kind of gay shit going on.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but yeah, there's a lot.
You
more.
Finished it?
Yeah, I did.
You did. You came away being like gay?
Yeah.
Damn.
It's a story. It's a story of coming out.
What the?
Oh
gay.
my
What
God.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I thought it was a story about sexually traumatizing these children and
the
introducing them to demons.
Whatever. Spoiler
No,
alert.
don't. You're going to spoil it. Don't spoil it. I'll spoil it for the audience. Don't spoil
Radio
it for me.
Girl podcaster helps original guy with a bowl cut come out of the closet.
Oh, yeah. Well, we knew that. And he's not, I thought he was just really gay, and that was obvious. Well, it doesn't matter. The point is podcasting defeats the underworld, right? That was really my
I thought it was
takeaway.
being gay defeating the underworld, which is, I'm like, that's an inversion.
That's an inversion. Yeah, that's an inversion. It's a butthole.
Oh my god.
But
Okay,
yeah, I
how
mean, they
about
always
this?
do these things. They always
How
do these
about-
things. They're always going to show you behind the curtain in Hollywood to whatever extent. And it doesn't have to be a nefarious thing. Or it's like people go like, it's revelation of the method. It's like, no, it could just be that like our reality is kind of fantastic in its ways, and it makes for an excellent plot. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily, you don't have to look at Stranger Things as being, they have to tell you. They have to tell, because that's what everybody in the conspiracy community always says. It's like, they have to tell you. I don't think they have to tell you shit. I think they choose to.
You know what we don't have to tell the people about?
What's that?
Fucking Columbine.
Oh my God.
I knew it.
Fuck
All right.
What's
How
this?
about this? How about this?
Okay.
Let me go to the bathroom real quick, and then we'll come back. I'll actually discuss Columbine. How
Okay.
about
Can we
that?
do
have
that?
like a
You guys
half
want
an
to take
hour
a break?
Oh, yeah. Play some
That's
Toad music.
cool. Just real brief. Yeah.
We
No,
could
take
take a
your
break.
time. We'll
Yeah.
we like to play Toad music, Toad's ukulele.
We're
while
going to
we,
go outside and say hi to the guests, too.
Yeah, we'll say hi to some
Hell yeah,
people. We'll be back in a few minutes. You guys get up, stretch your legs, do whatever you got to do. Traumatize some children.
Intermission.
Traumatize some children. Oh, yeah, set up the fog machine. Maybe we could do that.
All right, here we go.
All right, I'll be right
Enjoy
back.
some Toad.
Hold on, boys. I lost my sound. I can't hear you at all.
Going on.
Yeah.
we're
That was
back.
supposed to, we were
I
supposed
can
to do a
hear
whole
you.
bunch of production and Austin still can't hear us?
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. We were supposed to do a whole bunch of stuff. You guys were supposed to listen to Toad. Instead, we just ran around the coffee
Set
shop
up a
and
fog machine. We didn't do that.
we didn't set up the thing, so you guys didn't hear that. And that's fine. We're gonna edit that out for the future anyway. We got to remember that when
Yes.
we air this episode. All right. So
Just a
anywho,
blank minute of us saying that you're going to get Toad, not getting
and
Toad.
you didn't get to. Well, you did get to look at him, which is almost as valuable. I would say there's definitely value in getting
It's
to
a
have
form of torture.
having a gander at Toad. Okay, so we were promised, Austin,
Yes, sir.
that we were going to talk about Columbine.
I'll actually do it. I swear.
I'll do it.
Oh, wait. By the way, Panda Fly says somebody needs to send a fog machine. Panda,
We have a fog
somebody
machine.
literally sent a fog machine. It happened. They sent it. So we now have one. This thing's heavy.
I know I shouldn't put it on the
We
lights.
shouldn't put it
right?
on the lights. We're going to set it up later on, and we're going to fill this place with fog. And really, I can't wait to just the mysterious ambiance that it creates for this. Okay, all right. So continue.
Okay, so basically, I don't know. I definitely had mentioned one, we would discuss the death education program. I know we had also talked about just as far as the level of conditioning that I believe the school itself was potentially, let's just say, it could have been a sort of geographical and operational, asset to the intelligence apparatus. And I think that just knowing the long-standing conditioning of the curriculum itself that was presented at Columbine High School, including a death education program course that effectively they were allowing teachers with no expertise whatsoever in even psychotherapy were effectively walking students through hypnosis.
Oh,
Right,
that's dangerous, man.
Legitimately hypnotizing the students, and then also having them in the moment where they're under hypnosis, apparently walk the rest of the class through their traumatic events that actually occurred in their life. And so, meaning like the death of a loved one, things of that nature. So one of which was a black student who had to walk everyone through the death of his younger brother from cancer. And they even went and used his wherever he was actually, his burial plot, right, as a teaching tool, right? So they took on a field trip, they take the entire class down to have him present to them his dead brother's burial plot, right? And tell the story then. And the teacher himself says, we're going to utilize it as a teaching tool. They're taking kindergartners. I mean, it's effectively, this applied to as young as 5 years old, are going to funeral homes, being showed dead bodies at morgues, right?
Whoa.
Having to write their own obituary.
Wait, as young as what?
Say again?
As young as what?
As young as kindergarten. 5 years of age, which is fascinating.
I think I would assault the teacher.
Absolutely,
Probably would assault the teacher. I don't think there's any way around that. I would go, you made my 5-year-old write an obituary. I'm going to have to kill you now.
That is just bizarre. I mean,
I
that's
have
a
a
recipe
video I got to
for-
show you guys. Like, it's about the death education course. And I didn't mean to step on you there at the top. What were you gonna say?
No. We're just talking about how, I don't know, is it better to do that or trans your kid? Probably that, not
Right.
to translate the kid.
Hey, but I will say that they were legitimately having them present, well, right about, let's say, that they died at an early age, right? So they would say that some of the students even balked at the idea and resisted, saying that they wanted to live a long life, right? And they didn't appreciate having to write about dying as, like in the current moment, and which is very strange. But again, this comes in the form of the death education program that even there was a 2020, right? An actual, I found it crazy because there was a special report that was filmed at Columbine High School in 1990. So we're talking, 8 years before, or 9 years before Columbine High School would the massacre would effectively take place. You had this death education course that had been long-standing, and even as far as the curriculum itself, you had a victims advocate who was by the name of Ron Anye, I believe is his name. And basically, he mentions the theory that Columbine was itself an experiment, as I had sort of alluded to earlier. And so he pointed out the 2020 ABC program about the school's death education program whose activities even included taking kids to the funeral homes to watch the bodies get cremated.
Jeez.
All right. Yeah. Also, this is fascinating stuff, man. There was a student by the name of Tara Becker, and Tara Becker was a student from Columbine High School who attended this pro-family conference in Colorado to tell all the attendees about this death education at the school and the effect that it had on her. So she allegedly was talking about how she carried a booklet from her experience in the course. It was called Masquerade, and it was full of subliminal pictures and prose. And this is, as far as how Tara explained, she had been taught to use the hidden double meaning of subliminals, and how she had focused so much of her time and attention on death that she herself had tried to commit suicide.
Whoa.
So
see, that was my thinking on it too, was like, when you hyperfixate on a thing, you know, New Agers will call it like manifestation, for example. But, you know, definitely the idea of focusing on, and this goes back to the Marzinski story, right, with these people. So we probably were about to bring him up earlier in the show, and now it's surprising that we're going to bring him up now. But we talked to a clinical psychologist who deals with schizophrenics, and one of the stories that he told us was that there was this schizophrenic woman sitting in an emergency room, I believe, and it was a doctor was coming out and giving diagnoses to people, or not an emergency room, but whatever. And as he was giving these diagnoses to the patients, she, in her schizophrenic state, was watching these spirits that look like slimy black frogs come out of the doctor's mouth and glom on to the recipient of the diagnosis. And so Marzinski, we talked to him a little bit about it, and we started going down this conversation about what happens. Just think about, you know, remove the spiritual aspect about it. What happens when you're dealing with the placebo effect, right? That your strong belief in a thing actually ends up causing that thing to let's say heal you in the form of like a sugar pill for your, you know, ailment, and then you're actually cured of the ailment, and lo and behold, it was never real. And the nocebo effect works in the opposite direction, where if you believe that you have a thing, then you might be the recipient of that thing. And so what happens when a child, you know, especially given the psyche of a child, I don't know, I just feel like they have no control over, like, I remember, for example, when I thought when I was a kid that all of my family and everybody that I loved was going to die one day.
Well, that's true. And
I couldn't control that thought. It sucked a lot. I remember being in bed and just like spiraling. I couldn't walk it back, this knowledge that this was going to come to pass. So you have a child, and they're hyper fixated now on death, and they're watching a cremation process. They're writing their own obituary. I mean, these are all exercises in drenching the psyche in a concept, and the psyche of a child is not under control by any means. You know, it's like now if you think about the fact that everybody you know and love is going to die one day, you can at least be like, oh, shit, dude, I got work to do. I got a lawn to mow, you know, whatever. And you can move past it. A kid doesn't have that ability. So those thoughts of death, you're drenching their psychology in the concept of death. And then what happens? Now you have suicides as a result of it.
Exactly. And what's crazy to me is that basically she had so the producers of 2020 essentially had found and discovered this girl's testimony is really what had happened, and so that's what led to them actually covering this as a priority segment on I believe it aired in 1990, and it was filmed at Columbine High School about the death education program, which a special segment prioritizing this as a legitimate problem. Potentially, right? They're trying to raise red flags, talk about how parents aren't being notified that this is being taught at the school. And beyond that, it looks like they held like a suicide talking day after one of the kids committed suicide following the curriculum, right? So again, this is nothing that it really isn't surprising considering the actual school itself and what effectively has happened since. I mean, I was just reading about how it's there was a grooming case about a teacher from Columbine High School this very year in January of 2025, had basically gotten caught for, along with the administrative staff at the school, had withheld information from the parents, effectively declaring their child as homeless after being groomed sexually by a teacher at Columbine High School, who then resigned and moved to California after relying on the rest of the administrative staff to help coexist and essentially facilitate this agenda, to isolate the child in a loophole where they could then allegedly, there's a loophole in the California state law where if you're declared homeless, it doesn't matter what age you are, you can effectively shack up with anyone you so choose. And so this would be a way to it was an end around. It was how they could circumvent, the kind of, again, it's a legal loophole, which would allow an underage child who declared themselves as homeless to live at your residence, with no legal consequence.
I didn't,
and no parental
insane.
consent, right? And so that all just apparently the administrative staff of the school, along with other teachers, were helping facilitate this homeless declaration on behalf of the student to then help move them to California to live with the teacher who had just resigned. And all that was kept hidden from the parents, and no parental consent was given. And so this, to me, it's like, man, I understand just from my own personal experience from my high school days, right? Like, pedophiles are everywhere, right? I didn't realize this. I was very naive as a young person, and I'm lucky that at least I had some sort of sense of confidence as a young man, that I wasn't into gay shit. Let's just say that, right? And so it's a little easier. I don't know. I was one of those kids that was autistic enough that you don't want to stick anything close to my face, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Well, look, dude. So my thing with that is, like, if you look at the social programming aspect of it, so what takes place outside of the school, what takes place outside of these operations, look at the culture. Especially, I think these major city centers got hit with it the heaviest. How old are you, Austin?
I'm 33.
Okay, so I'm 35. So then that makes you millennial. Yeah, you're millennial, right? Technically speaking, I think.
92, February 92.
Yeah. So then so millennial. So what we were subjected to was this rampant attempt from all different media angles to destroy the relationship between child and parent. So it wasn't just like this rebellious thing. It was like, let's say, like emo music and pop and things like that, and grunge, etc. So much of and I saw people fall victim to this that I know personally. It became trendy to not just like rebel against your parents. I mean, obviously, right? The 80s got that in a big way, and it was happening before that. But our generation really honed in on it. It was trendy to dislike your parents, to hate your parents, and I think so much of this kind of crap. Like, I was listening to Green Day, and this is actually really interesting because Green Day and suicide, particularly in the album American Idiot, where the lead singer, who hates Americans, by the way, what's his name? I forget what his name is.
Billy something.
Billy. Yeah. So he creates this character. I guess he knew at some point he wanted to make this a play of Saint Jimmy, and Saint Jimmy is like this saint of lost. He's like the patron of lost children who has some sort of an affinity for suicide. He's the saint of children who have been like, the relationship with their parents has fallen apart, and they're engaged in this rebellious drug use and addiction and things like that. And I'm listening to this album because when I was a kid, I spent some time with my cousin over the holiday, and he had given me this album when I was younger, and it changed like my musical taste. Got me into, I guess, like rock and alternative music in a big way, where I was previously into hip hop. And I'm listening to this album, and I'm going, holy shit, dude. If you think about the lyrics of the album American Idiot, which was highly commercialized, highly pop punk, people hated that album. They said it was a real departure from their early roots, as every, rock band is a victim of that sort of a narrative. But It was programming, and I don't know to what degree the homosexual guy that is the lead singer of Green Day knew that was the case, or what role he actively played in that. But the themes of like suicide and escaping your parents and rampant drug use and living out on the streets and rebelling against the system and bucking it off and burning down your cities and all this crap was all in this album, dude. And so to know that we were being primed with that when we were younger, this is obviously leaking into our psyche and informing our decisions. Social contagion is a bitch. And what a better way to enforce social contagion than to hijack it with an actual operation. But then you look at what the public school system is doing in places like California, where certainly that social contagion is rampant, and it's doing all these legal loopholes to once you find that kid that falls through the holes and is into that system now of breaking away from their parents and is into that system of that like rebellious nature, whatever. Well, we got a thing for them. Tell them that if they're homeless, which so many of them would become, you can molest this kid. You can have them live with you, and legally nothing can be done about it because homeless children operate under a different legal system than not homeless children. That's remarkable.
Isn't it? And for it to be directly connected back to Columbine in its modern form is too much for me, as far as just seriously considering it being a legitimate operational hub of some kind that they can flex and greenlight anytime they so choose. And seeing the overall just effect psychologically that the death education program and curriculum had on some of those students from Columbine. It's sickening, man, to actually have witnessed the parents not necessarily following up with what is being effectively taught at the school itself, that they're are overexposing their children to. And that's something I think, just the level of consent that is unnecessary in terms of parental consent. As far as, again, I think I described it as public school. This is as I wrote it down, because I was like, man, it legitimately feels like this. Public school is the equivalent of voluntarily placing your child into state custody. And I think you need to look at it as that, honestly, at a certain level. And it will only help in terms of, let's just say, manufacturing the proper defense mechanism, to understand what threat is truly facing your children in this environment. And so, but yeah, it's fascinating to me that 2020 felt the need to prioritize doing a segment on this curriculum at Columbine High School physically. And then for Tara Becker and her testimony, to have been reinforced at so many different levels by other witnesses and other members of Columbine high schoolers, just as far as students. And so, yeah, she in her testimony, she claimed that the subject of death was integrated into many of the courses at her high school. And she said that death was made to look glamorous, that living was hard, and that reincarnation would solve their problems. So that alone, right?
In class?
In class.
That's hilarious.
Yes. And the video I actually have has Tara Becker, so you can put a face to it. But this is the most fascinating aspect of her testimony, though. Students were told that they would always return to a much better life form. They would return to the oversoul and become like God. After one of the students at her school, exactly. After one of the students at her school committed suicide, as I mentioned, a suicide talking day was held, and every class was to talk about death. Class assignments were for students to write their own obituaries and suicide notes. They were told to trust their own judgment in choosing whether to live or die. So Tara began to think of suicide as a means of solving some of her problems. She thought of liberating her spirit from enslavement to her body. She says she also wanted to die to help relieve the planet of overpopulation, which is obviously a myth. I mean, these were just a few of the insane, notions theoretically that were sort of conditioned into Tara and other students at Columbine by their teachers, which is just how is this not, the ultimate a focal point in terms of some of the let's just say the fallout and the consequential reporting, and why was there no media spotlight on this? Like that is amazing.
Well, it feels like almost like not a dry run, super wet, but like this idea is you still see this right now as far as like children and their agency and the decisions that they can make about, let's say, things like the fluidity of their gender,
Right.
which is really what's stuck in a huge way. And what does that all lead to, by the way? All right. I mean, statistically speaking, that thing it only takes a more convoluted route to the same logical end. But now it's been like it's almost like they saw it was viable. They said this works, and then they introduced it at scale through acceptance and things of that nature. Love is love. Yada yada. This is it bleeds all the way into the modern day LGBTQ narrative. T being the functional letter. That's the sneaky door to the exact same thing, which is super high suicide rates.
Absolutely, buddy. And I'm honestly, I think that it's so disturbing to see the level of conditioning that the Columbine students were sort of enduring for a decade, prior to the massacre, like that. I mean, imagine being a kindergartner and coming up through that conditioning, not necessarily just all of a sudden you're at Columbine as a sophomore or something, and you have this brief momentary exposure. But at the same point, it's like, I mean, I went to the same school I was in the same area, locale from preschool to senior year, obviously, and I never actually moved high schools, right? And the level of really how it was a small town environment, right? So it's like everyone sort of knows each other, and there's a reputational impact. You know what I'm saying? But in a larger community, in the Denver area, let's say, you're not going to have necessarily quite as a intimate sort of dynamic in terms of the parents, right? And even at our school, where I grew up, just because we had our parents effectively kind of very much involved, right, as far as individuals who had supportive parents and a decent family background as far as stable, that was sort of, my mom was like the homeroom mom when I was like in third grade type of thing. You know what I mean? So I'm very grateful for my experience, although I will say the threat was clearly on the table. Many different individuals would inevitably, endure legal consequences because of their strange sexual proclivities as teachers at my school. So, I had some strange interactions that in hindsight, I now see what it was. And then obviously the guy got busted for being a pedophile and did prison time for trying to arrange a sexual relationship with like a 12-year-old. But, that is the way of the world, it seems. And so I will say that but this seems far more extraordinary than even what I was just describing. I know it's a disgusting thing to, explain to be a sort of unfortunate reality we face, but death education at Columbine High School, like, I'm sorry, but understanding what would ultimately come of this, right? I mean, 13 dead students, 15 technically, including the two perpetrators, and 24 injured, right, as well, which they were mentioning they thought 25 were dead the day of. Obviously, they had even reported that much, but still, I think having a sort of understanding and a context, right, just having context in terms of the death education program and the curriculum itself.
How many was it? You said 13?
Yeah, it was 13 dead students plus the two perpetrators who were seniors at the school, obviously. So that's 15. And
so these guys were, just to clarify, the shooters and everybody in this class were in this death education program for the entirety of their tenure at Columbine, because it's not just Columbine High School; it's just Columbine Elementary to middle school, then to high school.
Yeah, So yes. So Dylan and Eric had both gone through the death education curriculum, right? And so that in itself, they're writing their own obituaries, things of that nature, and also the suicide note aspect of things, I think is one of the
That's
most.
exactly what I was thinking.
This is what I'm trying to paint here, because it almost seems premeditated or like massaged in a way.
Well, I mean, massaged in the biggest way, but look at so just to I think I like but we have a habit here on this show of pointing out when it leaves the confines of, like, let's say the experiment, and it enters the MK Ultra free range program thing. Right. And one of the examples I think that probably fits in pretty well here is the string of social contagion related suicides that took place after the show 13 Reasons Why. And 13 Reasons Why becomes incredibly popular on Netflix, and effectively it's a girl who is giving you it starts off with the suicide, and then it goes into the explanation as to why these things took place, and I guess the 13 reasons are why she committed. And after that, you do see this notable tick in suicide rates among young girls in particular, and it just goes to show you. And I remember hearing about that show, and I'm going, "This is not good. This is not good," because what you do is that's horrifying. So Pandafly in the chat says 13 Reasons Why ruined my little brother. He's very suicidal to this very day. So that show plays a huge role in that social contagion. And what it does is it makes you empathize. If you sit there and you listen to it, you start to understand the why, which I think is a huge problem. It's kind of this, not the same thing, but when they go through this effort now within Disney to popularize the villains so that you can empathize with the villain. So when we grew up, they were horrifying monsters that did horrifying things in the Disney series. Well, now let's rewind time so that you can empathize with this character, and I think that's a mistake. And I think it's because once you start to really examine the path that leads an individual there, especially an individual who you make likable, so that they are the protagonist, even though they are a bad guy in so many ways. Then it becomes easier to emulate because that's all we do, right? I mean, especially here in the West, we have a real nasty habit for emulating the protagonists of large films and series, especially young people. So what happens then to young people?
It's not just in the West. This is human beings in general. We're story driven. So we need that archetype. We need that story. When you flip it on its head, it's persuasive and it's very interesting. But what does it produce? It's like, what does this program produce of having this introducing children to death? Very interesting to me, but the fruits obviously are completely rotten.
Yeah. And what happens when your protagonist is being championed for committing suicide? Because what happens in the 13 Reasons series is you see intimately how all these people wronged her. And then they make her the champion. They make her the protagonist. She is the protagonist. And then by the end of it, you go, oh, well, that's why. And it all feels justified.
Yeah. Well, I guess a question for Austin. This program that you're talking about, do you think this program leads that? Does it create naturally the Columbine Massacre, or is it... It's hard to explain. Is it like completely manufactured? In your opinion, do you think they had this program running in order to justify and do this massacre, or do you think that the program was running and then they were like, let's see what we get out of this, and then they get?
I think they had specific schools that were isolated and prioritized in actually implementing this curriculum for a reason, so they could sort of rely on a geographical green light anytime they so choose in order to facilitate and pursue the agenda at play. And so I think there are kind of options on the table at all times, and it's up to them to kind of put the proper pieces into place and then activate, the operation, I think. And many times it's been suggested that some of these domestic operations go off, let's just say, kind of in this not so well managed or designed kind of way, where it just is effectively a sort of a consequence of the kind of just the operational standpoint, in terms of it being lying in wait and actively available. You still have the operatives in place, so therefore occasionally you will have these selfish agendas playing into when and where these green lights are effectively given. And I think that also plays into the human aspect. There's just the human element of things. But I will say that all the strange, circumstances surrounding the aftermath of Columbine. I mean, 10 months later, right, that subway shop murder happens, in terms of those two students who were at the actual massacre itself, and then basically gunned down in a subway shop that's less than 2 blocks from Columbine 10 months after the massacre happens. And later on, it's pretty much proven that the girl herself, who was one of the 2 victims at the subway shop, was actually related to Rachel Scott, who was the very first victim on the day of the Columbine massacre at the school. And it turns out that this subway shop specifically was, all of these allegations arose surrounding 50 separate cases that the local investigators were pursuing regarding a drug ring operating through the subway shop in the area. So that instantly, I thought, Blackjack Pizza is not at all insulated from that in terms of
what kind of drugs.
Now, this is the thing. There's a methamphetamine connection to what I believe is, one, you have a drug trafficking operation within the local kind of a neo-Nazi white supremacist organization of the White Eagle Underground that is legitimately, in terms of the geographical footprint, they're utilizing this organization to traffic drugs within the area, and that includes methamphetamine. Now, I know for a fact 2 of the adult delivery drivers at Blackjack Pizza restaurant were legitimately addicted to methamphetamine and helping traffic the substance as well, right, illegally. And so this was a drug trafficking operation. And then it turns out that 2 of the Blackjack Pizza delivery drivers, the adults who were working alongside Dylan and Eric at the Blackjack Pizza restaurant less than 5 miles from Columbine, they happened to be the individuals who went with Eric and Dylan to the gun show with their 18-year-old friend that was a girl, which is how they essentially provided them with the illegal weapons. Obtaining the weapons on behalf of Dylan and Eric, it was still illegal because they were underage, but they effectively kind of skirted that legality due to the 18-year-old girlfriend, right? But they were the individuals who went with them to the gun show and provided them with the weapons after purchasing them. So it makes a lot of sense that after, by the way, this plays into an absurd connection that instantly reminded me of Omar Mateen and the Pulse Nightclub Network, as far as the Michael Sanford connection to the black site where Omar Mateen was allegedly trained. And it turns out that there's a connection to an individual by the name of Nathan Johnson, as far as being an adult delivery driver at Blackjack Pizza restaurant. So this gave me deja vu instantly, right? And I thought Omar Mateen, because what inevitably happens is that this guy, who knew Dylan and Eric personally, lived in Sedalia, Colorado, which is technically the headquarters, only 14 miles from Columbine, right? And was technically the headquarters of the White Eagle Underground and the Brotherhood of the White Temple, and the Star Chamber, which is the upper echelon leadership, faction of that very group. Well, it turns out that they were headquartered there in the Sedalia, Colorado headquarters for the complex, as far as the White Eagle Underground. And members, as far as the Blackjack Pizza delivery drivers, were associated with the white supremacist organization, and also were helping with the drug trafficking aspect of things. So inevitably, this guy, who was personal friends with Dylan and Eric and worked at Blackjack Pizza as an adult delivery driver at the time, years later in 2008 would effectively be caught up in a plot, in an assassination plot. And he consequentially endures, legal right, as far as like he legitimately goes to jail for this. And it turns out that there was an assassination plot against Barack Obama in 2008 at the Democratic National Convention in Denver, Colorado. And a man by the name of Nathan Johnson was caught up in this plot. And it turns out it's the same individual who was an adult pizza delivery driver at Blackjack Pizza Restaurant with Dylan and Eric. Now that's too much to dismiss if you consider that it turns out, by the way, he's caught up on these charges in 2008. Him and his two other friends who were the other perpetrators, they tried to flee from the police, and inevitably it turns out that they had direct connections to the Aryan organization, the white supremacist organization in that area, and had been caught with a mobile methamphetamine drug lab, right, is what they technically had. So it looks like, instantly I thought of, as I mentioned, Omar Mateen, right? Because what actually came of my investigation into the Pulse nightclub network was there was a cabal, essentially, that these individuals, these domestic operatives, so there was a radicalization pipeline set up online, an Islamic seminary course, essentially, right? And it's fascinating because this all was set up through a CIA asset who was former FBI, and effectively distanced himself at a certain point with a falling out narrative that was obviously fictionalized for public perception. And in reality, it turns out that he had set up a radicalization pipeline on behalf of the intelligence apparatus in order to lure children who fit a character profile into place, who are very suggestible, who are clearly suffering, let's say from an unstable home, whatever the case may be. There are many different, characteristics that fit. But it seems like what had happened is that it wasn't only Omar Mateen. This is according to James Wesley Howell, who, by the way, the very same day that the Pulse nightclub was shot up by Omar, well, there was a gay pride parade in Los Angeles all the way across on the other side of the country. And it was happening at the very same moment. And James Wesley Howell was arrested and apprehended with an arsenal in his vehicle and pipe bombs and all these various tools that he was going to utilize in attacking the gay pride parade when he was under, basically he was giving his confession or essentially being interviewed by the local investigators before the FBI inserted themselves in the case. Removed all the local investigators from being able to have any direct contact with the individual, James Wesley Howell. And but before they involved themselves, there was a local reporter who went and actually discussed this with him at length. And she was a woman, and he actually was very strangely, like, sexually, he was kind of like hitting on her, staring at her tits the whole time, she said, and things like that. Very interesting the way he was acting. But at the same time, he gave a statement, right? When it's fascinating stuff, because the guy's basically suggesting that he was trained up at a CIA black site in Virginia with Omar Mateen and a kid by the name of Michael J. Sanford, and also Micah Xavier Howard, I think was his name, or it could have been Micah Johnson. Let me look real quick, because he shot up. So he basically commits a mass shooting at a Black Lives Matter rally. And in Dallas, and he kills all these cops in Dallas. So that was another guy who was trained up with Omar Mateen at the Virginia black site, allegedly. And let me make sure it was Micah Xavier Johnson. Yeah, it's Johnson. So yeah, that guy.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but how often does this meth angle come up? I mean, you keep talking about it, and Top and I keep nodding to each other because it comes up quite a bit in our research. And somebody from your YouTube even mentioned the whole Pervitin aspect, which plays a huge role in Hitler's legacy. And Dr. Marzinski, the gentleman that we mentioned before, had said that in his experience, the number one thing that emulates most the symptoms of schizophrenia is methamphetamine. He says that it seems to open a spiritual doorway, and that these things just come flooding through, maybe cues you into a certain frequency where you're susceptible by entities outside of yourself. And once again, just to bring it back to that kind of free range aspect that we always talk about, I think about the prevalence of Adderall within the the diagnosis of ADHD and the prescription to children specifically, and children often being fodder for these programs. And I look at SSRIs as, okay, well, there's your dissociative aspect, right? But then you look at Adderall, and is that your amphetamine aspect that allows children to, maybe cue into a different aspect of what they were looking into?
Right. Yeah, and it was definitely, I think that, just understanding that well, first of all, I will say that methamphetamine does open these potential gateways in terms of, this flooding in of these sort of, I think the alters is almost like how you activate utilizing a methamphetamine based, sort of pharmaceutical product or agent of some kind, let's say even Adderall. I think it's very interesting how much it sort of accesses that speed-based schizophrenic, a pathway almost in a way, right? Where I could see it far more just being open and suggestible, in terms of what methamphetamine might offer in terms of the kind of chemical reaction in the brain. But at the same time, I think it's important to mention that obviously Eric Harris was subscribed Lovix, I believe, was the antidepressant, right? Which was basically, I believe, kept all that information was withheld from the parents of the victims as well, which I find very interesting, especially considering that you had the parents of the victims actually sue. Not only the authorities in the local Jefferson County Police Department, but also they sued a pharmaceutical company that provided Eric with the antidepressants, right? Which again, Lovix is the exact same antidepressant that Adam Lanza was on and James Holmes was on. So it does stand to reason that this provides them with some sort of pharmaceutical agent that will help at least keep them in a sort of dissociative state or in a certain way, which is what I think happens to them, unfortunately, throughout the.
I think it's like they're programmed with this thing, maybe a prolonged version of it. And then when it comes time to do the deed, the disassociatives, they allow, whatever feelings of morality would typically get in the way, of committing acts of atrocity. That they're not there anymore. You don't really feel them. So it's an elongated process. Maybe the Adderall, maybe the methamphetamine takes some early role in these things gaining access to the individual, plus the layered programming, but then eventually the disassociatives. And there's also this snapback effect that seems to take place where people will cold turkey them because they are horrifying to be on for any length of time. And when that happens, there is this rebound effect where all of these heightened emotions. So, if they don't get it done while they're in the disassociative state, it seems that there's also this proclivity for maybe bouts of violence after they cold turkey because there's a whiplash effect with these really charged emotions start to emerge.
No doubt. Yeah. I definitely think that it is a perfect recipe that they're relying on, obviously, whenever they kind of green light these assets. And it's unfortunate that so many of these, I think, not only are they relying on antidepressants, but even benzos, I think are very dangerous in terms of just the general public being over accessing these pharmaceutical products. And clearly it keeps them in this sort of weak state of mind, in my opinion. And I believe it is this pharmaceutical crutch at the end of the day where individuals can't even function, go on a basic plane flight without effectively going into some sort of panic attack.
Dude, this is what gets me about it is like when we have conversations like this, I'm really forced to look at the entire apparatus of the mental health industry as an enemy. I mean, because it's like everything that they prescribe, every diagnosis that they give, it seems like therapists and psychologists are primarily a selection process for maybe, there's a giant body of operations they engage in where they're just trying to go through the motions. But I think that at the highest levels, they will find an individual and that individual will flag the system And maybe the psychologist or the therapist doesn't know that, but once the system is flagged, this person goes into the selection process or is selected through the selection process, and then is, they are assigned handlers that they probably aren't even aware of, or they're put into programs that are supposed to be beneficial for the patient, but end up furthering the process of brainwashing. So it's like, okay, the healthcare professionals seem to be tied into this selection process knowingly or unknowingly.
By the way, little inside baseball, the family that has the kid always in a dress.
Yep.
Their second son now.
They have two sons, and is he also?
He's
also in a dress.
So but they're mental health care professionals, and it's just like now that you mention it, I'm like, yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, when I went through the grinder,
what are the odds?
Pretty astronomical, actually. When I went through the grinder, they hit me with the amphetamines and all that other shit, and I mean, it just seems like what we've clung to it. And we'll say things like we have a mental health crisis here in America. I think the mental health crisis was created, and the mental health care professionals are part of the apparatus that helped create it. And I don't think that. I think we should. I know. Every once in a while, you get somebody who goes, well, it kind of helped me. Well, I think what it kind of helped you do was not feel the feelings for a little bit while you were going through something very sad in your life. God knows we all have sad things that happen in our lives. I don't think that we need pills prescribed to us, because at the end of the day, a sad thing's going to happen again. It's the nature of life. And if you don't deal with it, you don't learn how to deal with it, you're going to be unequipped to deal with it in the future. And then, you're going to be back on these pills. So, I don't know, man. I always enjoy talking to you because you have this ability to affirm sort of the crazy things that we only speculate to here on this show, and it's always fantastic because I always look forward. I go, no, when we talk to Austin, he's going to do a good job of bringing up the operations, the names, the dates, the documents that came out of the FOIA request, all these different things that show you that it's true. Like, all this shit is true, man, and. It's
disturbing.
It gets framed so many different ways too. It's like, we have a gun problem. We have a mental health problem. We have a holdover from Operation Paperclip problem. We have intelligence apparatus that is experimenting. Well, we're done with the experimenting phase. That is now treating, the American public like guinea pigs, and to serve whatever ends they've decided are fit. And
it's like when your son is talking about, like, what do you think about simulation theory?
Yeah,
it's almost diminutive of to describe what we're living in. It's like, like, this is a creation. But then Austin comes, and we're kind of like, oh, this is like simulation theory. Austin comes, he's like, no, let me explain to you the ins and outs of how this works.
Yeah,
and then you look at it and you go, shit, man, I wish I would have just talking about simulation theory.
I know. These things, and we talk about it before, Austin. It's like you look at these things for a long time and you get fucking bummed out.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. It needs to be said. There's a guy here, John Lissel, and we're going to wrap it up here shortly, but I wanted to bring this up. He was on Rogan's podcast with a book about Project Monarch.
I was actually this is what I was talking with Jose about a little bit.
That's interesting. And so this guy it sounds like he's coming out. He's been on Rogan's podcast, and he's kind of like watering it down.
This is like to bring it right back to the beginning of the episode. The creator complex.
What is it? The influencer industrial complex. This guy seems to be in it.
So again, same sort of suspect. The guy has 6,000 followers on Twitter, but he's got a book that nobody really buys, and he makes it to Rogan, and his book is like diminutive of Project MK Ultra, of Project Monarch.
Yeah,
and he's just kind of like asking these simple questions, but almost running a distraction for the systems that are propping them up. And I'm like, it's very interesting to watch somebody do that, gain a platform, just kind of to cast shade and to make it a little bit more blurry than you've been laying out for the last I don't know.
He kind of
10
makes
hours.
it seem like conspiracy theorists, to use his words,
Yes.
are like making a sort
Yeah,
of a
why
mountain
are
out of a molehill.
conspiracy theorists talking about Project Monarch? It's like,
Yeah.
well, because it existed and because it happened and because it's probably still continuing under a different name and because we have all of this proof and actions and dead bodies stacked up, like pointing right at it. That's why we're talking
this is what's
about it.
disingenuous. He goes, the earliest reference that I can find comes from October 1993 edition of Phoenix Journal. And he's asking, can anybody find any earlier references to Monarch? And it's like,
Well, no, because it's a different name.
It's exactly. Get the word Monarch out of your mouth. You wrote a book on
It's
this?
like, oh, well, we renamed it, so it's not the same. It's
not
like,
the same
who
thing.
cares?
You wrote a book on this. You just went on the biggest podcast in the world about this, and you're asking if anybody can find. You should be the guy that shows people that before 1993 it existed in so many different forms. You know,
But if he was that guy, he wouldn't be on Rogan. He wouldn't have a book that was artificially pushed. He wouldn't be asking these stupid questions. He's the guy that gets paid to ask these questions, to make this a little bit more confusing to the general public or the people who aren't in the know.
So now some asshole will parrot like that wasn't even a thing before 1993.
And this is what we've got to deal with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think just reading through From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory by Michael Aquino and co-authored by General Paul Vallely, that book is the PSYOP doctrine, right? It is the mind war that honestly we should always beware of, because that in itself, I think, represents the level of deliberate deception that has been deployed in terms of public influence and these. I don't believe that Mockingbird ever ended. I call it modern Mockingbird, or the influencer industrial complex as well, obviously, because these are viable assets that will forever be utilized in this sort of context in terms of having that deliberate diabolical effect on, just as far as, the public perception in regard to so many of these various legal cases and just as well as influencing their philosophies as well. And I will say, are you guys with us now? Because I can't.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I want to actually show you this, because this is like now that as you're talking about this, I'm realizing it's important to highlight it, because this guy says conspiracy theorists often reference that CIA Project Monarch. The earliest reference to it that I can find comes from October 1993 edition of Phoenix Journal. One of the journal's editors claims to be a 9-foot-tall alien. Can anyone find an earlier reference to Monarch?
Might be.
Now, listen to this, though. The way that that's packaged, is that not to dismiss it? So what you're talking about right now, Austin, is how far back these things go, that these are textbook operations, that these patterns have been laid out and repeated over generations and generations. But the way that this guy's tweet is structured, the guy who's been on Rogan, the guy who wrote the book, he's dismissing it. He's saying, I don't know, it comes from a journal, the Phoenix Journal. I don't know, one of the journal's editors claims to be a 9-foot-tall alien. It's literally brushing it away.
One of the editors claims to be a podcaster. It's like
same shit.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same technique. It's the same technique, almost word for word. But it's gotten old.
Yeah. It's the same shit, though. Same technique, man. So I got to highlight that, because you're a guy that's like, you're going through all of this. You're a wealth of information. How on earth would you be able to tell us so much if this was something that just came up in 1993? It's probably not even credible, because there's
Maybe
a 9-foot-tall
that guy
alien.
is a giant. I don't know.
Maybe he's a giant.
I've seen him.
But I will say, though, that to kind of bridge that gap as far as, the extraordinary nature of these individual assets and how profound, honestly, the level of connections they have up into this very moment in terms of the prominent personalities behind, like we mentioned at the beginning, setting the table and controlling the narrative, right? Like that is a long-standing strategy and tool of the power cabal, the puppet masters. And so in no way is it shocking, right, that they would have this ultimate goal of essentially kind of let's just say positioning those viable assets into place to very much, I think, one example being, you guys know what's her name, Dana Duda, right? She's on Twitter, right? She does a podcast.
I've heard of her.
She's pretty great on, she's basically one of the leading experts on the Process Church of the Final Judgment, has done amazing work on kind of tracing really really kind of following that organization into its modern form and the rehabbed image that it sort of benefited from in terms of becoming this best friends animal shelter society, right? It's like about the welfare of animals. It's ridiculous because they legitimately they engage in animal sacrifice. I mean, it's like it's ridiculous, but at the same point, she just sort of exposed all of the strange connections behind Candace Owens and right, just as far as like her father legitimately held the security contract based on his resume. He held the security contract for Sandy Hook as far as the cleanup.
Oh,
right.
That's
Following
not suspicious or strange
That's
at all.
not suspicious at all. Yeah, and let's talk about Farmer, right? The Lord Farmer, her father-in-law, who's tied back to the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, and the Tavistock Institute. So how are we going to be surprised whenever we're talking about beacons of social engineering and conditioning, right? This is the Origin Project, and now it's extending into modern day. And the same financiers behind funding Candace Owens' rise to prominence after her 17-day arranged marriage with a man she never even knew or barely met, except at a Turning Point event, right? When she received a message and a vision from God to go to the UK with Charlie. And then she meets this man, doesn't even have a sit-down dinner with him, and gets married within 17 days. I mean, that alone is an arranged marriage, man. He's tied back to the very same individuals who have been socially engineering and conditioning modern society for generations. And what was he a part of? A Christian organization that was trying to spotlight anti-Semitism and influence Western Christians. This is a diabolical in my mind, this is an influence operation. And they're intending on subverting the moral values of the West. And in no way is a Candace Owens or a Tucker Carlson exempt from this, and in many ways, the same financiers behind Candace Owens' rise to prominence financed Tucker Carlson's new show. So what are we doing? In terms of,
one of the scary things, though, not scary. I mean, I'm happy about it. Wouldn't rather be doing anything else. But when it really comes down to it, we're swimming in the same pool as these influencers who are part of this influencer industrial complex, like you've said.
Right.
And then, but that makes us the opposition, which is wild. And I'm happy when Austin is the opposition. I'm a little bit more concerned for the public when we're included in that. When I go, oh, we're the opposition to the official narrative that somebody, cognitive infiltration style hopes to steer and disseminate to the public. Guys like us, for better or for worse, are the guys that stand in the way of those sophisticated programs.
What are your thoughts, both of you, as far as just because this Brad brought this to my attention on he was just texting me basically about, it was so funny, dude. I'll read it because it was hilarious to me. He texted me about Candace. No, Brad Binkley.
Binkley.
Yes. This was hilarious, honestly, because just understanding, right, the value of the Candace effect in this very moment, it is real, right? And so he goes, dude, you can get a signed copy of Candace's book for just under $200. What a deal. And then he goes, I can get a Freddie Freeman signed World Series champion baseball for less than a signed copy of Candace's book. Oh. And I said, wow, the Candace effect is real. How dare you question the value of this Black intellectual warrior for truth? And then I had to address the hilarious viral conspiracy surrounding Erica Kirk potentially being 9 weeks pregnant, although Charlie had died 11 weeks prior to that.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Turns out it's a debunked conspiracy, allegedly, and she never made this announcement, although she did say that she prayed that God would make her pregnant the day that Charlie died. And then, but either way, keep your eyes peeled because there might be an announcement. But at the same time, everything you look at, it claims to have debunked this claim. But still, I will say that it was complete with a prediction that J.D. Vance was the illegitimate father and that he would effectively leave his current wife for Erica in 2028 during his presidential bid. I thought it was perfect. But
that is perfect. That is perfect.
Politics is theater.
The point of what I was trying to get at, though, and why I was kind of asking your thoughts on the notion that perhaps Candace and people of the like, are potentially kind of setting a pretext. This is a precedent-setting notion or operation of some kind where they could, due to the fact that some of the things that she has claimed to have been essentially true regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination, various sort of things that can be significantly disproven just almost at face value after just digging a little bit below the surface. Some of the things that she alludes to as implications and things like that, they could legitimately wind up being defamation lawsuits in the future, and could lead to a fundamental crackdown on content creators and free speech in general on digital platforms, as well as we had been talking recently about the pipe bomb story regarding January 6th and how it was effectively debunked after it kind of took the spotlight for a brief moment, which inherently damages the credibility of anyone who was attached to this story. Even knowing that the J6 pipe bomb story is credibly, sort of flawed, obviously, filling in the details by naming a legitimate perpetrator who was a Capitol police officer and claiming they then benefited from this and were essentially rewarded with a CIA position a few weeks after the event took place, after provoking the crowd and all of this. Effectively, that was all disproven and debunked over the course of a weekend. And then people like Thomas Massey and individual political prominent personalities are kind of it's really hanging around their neck in terms of the affected credibility of some kind. But also it led into the Trump administration, essentially, even when Mohammed bin Salman was in the White House with him just the other day, and an ABC journalist asked about the 9/11 victims' families and how they're very upset that MBS would be invited into the White House. Of course, they didn't mention how they just gave a White House tour to al-Jilani, who was literally the head of ISIS and murdered American military personnel and Marines in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, and was just given a White House tour by Trump himself. And has been installed in Syria as the puppet, obviously. But at the same time, I think it's fascinating to see that Mohammed bin Salman, right? They ask about Khashoggi, Adnan Khashoggi, who everyone knows at this point, Donald Trump purchased Adnan Khashoggi's yacht, right? Rigged fully with audiovisual blackmail, and things of that nature. So not at all surprising. But then what does he do? He pursues potentially revoking the license of ABC, which probably, obviously that won't happen, I would imagine, but still a precedent-setting notion where you're legitimately seeing an effective crackdown by the current White House administration on mainstream media publications. So not only would they potentially use this as a justification for defamation lawsuits on a private person like a Candace Owens, who is of such, prominence in the moment and setting the narrative and controlling these sort of alternative theories, I'm just very skeptical, and by the way, the additional thread there and the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, it's fascinating that one of the key members of that Christian Zionist organization that he founded in like 1942, right? Strange timing. Mm-hmm. It seems to have been an sort of ideological subversion operation from day one, and this individual is directly tied at the hip with the same perpetrators who were responsible for being directly just say leadership positions of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, right, and Chatham House. So that in itself, you wonder Chatham House rules, and the only additional connection though is that Michael Aquino, right, his co-author Paul Vallely, I mentioned, who helped write from what was it? Oh shit, I keep forgetting. From Psyop to Mind War: The Psychology of Victory. It's a strange title, but so he was, guess what? Paul Vallely, co-author of this book, who wrote the very doctrine, who wrote the playbook of how you socially engineer and manipulate public perception and stage violent, arousing false flags, right? This is all within the concept. I mean, they're talking about hypnosis, everything. It's layered in. Even the introduction is fascinating. And he's providing the legitimate playbook and doctrine. And he happens to be, Paul Vallely, an advisory council member of Turning Point USA.
Holy crap.
So come on now. Yeah.
Jeez,
From day
man.
one.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm not so worried about the whole influencer crackdown because, I mean, I think we're going to see people that we know personally get wrapped up in this sort of a thing. Shout out to Atmo, by the way. The fog juice has arrived. We now have fog juice for the fog machine. But we have pivoted, and I'm sure you've noticed, Austin, over the last year, it really focusing in on the spiritual, supernatural aspect and trying to lead our listeners to a relationship with God. And I think that the one of the last pseudo-political places that I'm willing to even engage with in regards to my own theories is this idea of disclosure, because I think it's going to be very important, and it seems like they're adamant on doing that, and that'll become a dangerous place to be, but it's not a dangerous place to be first and foremost. First and foremost is in the political espionage arena. If you're talking about that sort of thing, Austin, then you're probably going to find yourself in a shaky ground. But as far as where we're going, I have been saying for the longest time that politics is theater. It's something that I wholeheartedly believe, and I believed it for a long time. And so I don't spend too much time in that arena. I love having a guy like you on because you talk about the psychological warfare aspect of it. And it's, for me, important to peel back that curtain to show the audience that this thing that you believe in so wholeheartedly is ruled by a set of machinations that you don't have access to and you cannot see. In other words, you're not going to the booth and changing much of anything. And so that's what's important. But of course, talking about, let's say, this influencer industrial complex, that's a dangerous place to be as well. But I think you can operate right next to it, which is where we're going to end up operating, I think. And that is, if it is an influencer who is talking about the supernatural, if it is an influencer who is talking about the alien disclosure operation, things of that nature, that'll be a safe place for a while. I have a feeling that after all of our work is said and done, and we've shown people what we can show people, we're probably going to end up about facing straight towards God. And that'll be the last dangerous place to be. But I think we're kind of one step ahead of the apparatus as it closes up on the influencers. And so, you know, I look forward to that being dangerous when we're telling you that Jesus Christ is real and that he died for your sins and that he is the way, the truth, and the life. And then they send our heads rolling.
I have something to share on that exact point. Let me let my dog out just real quick. It'll take me a second. She's freaking out, and then I'll come back and give my final thought.
Go for it, brother. Go for it.
All right, thank you. I'll be right back.
But I mean, I could see that coming. You know, the influencer clampdown. I can see all that shit coming. But you know,
it's weird. It's like levels of hell that we've sort of like sidestepped or escaped in a way. So like comedy, a little bit dangerous. Politics becoming increasingly more dangerous, and now we're like, I'd rather spend my time looking into this, but I think this is the most dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's going to be we're gonna say what we have to say and show our audience the compelling information that says this disclosure shit is gay and fake, and worse than that, it's a dangerous, like soul level dangerous psyop. And then after that, I don't know. I don't know what the next thing that's going to show itself is. But I have a feeling that disclosure is the big deception. And so who knows what lies beyond that? Maybe our work will be done and we'll be happily decapitated, you know, and moving on. So yeah, it's but I could see all that shit happening, man. Now, you know, soon if you're in the political arena, your opposition, you're going to be face to face with kind of the Candace Owens of the world or whatever. Whatever happened to Ian Carroll? He really fell the fuck off, huh?
No, he's still like circling Candace Owens. He's just kind of like playing defense for her. He's doing like a sort of support role. And it's funny because it's like I like Ian and I like what he's doing, and people are like, oh, have him on. And I was like, there was a time where I did want to have him on. But now I'm like, well, what will we talk about?
I think we've far exceeded. I'm not like, this isn't a pat on our back or a stab at him. I think it's just a fact of the matter. It's a little milquetoast, the shit that he's talking about. I don't really have any desire to talk about it. Okay, so what you got, Austin?
You talking about Ian Carroll?
Yeah, just because, there was a time where I thought he was going to be much more established in this sort of influencer community, and it does seem like he's taken a seat back and he's gone into more of a support role for Candace Owens.
Oh, man.
And even if we were to talk to him, I don't know what interesting thing he would have to offer.
I mean, like, the only reason I did want to talk to him was because of his telepathy tapes take, which I think he missed. And then after that, it's just kind of like...
Which, by the way, I think we nailed... And if I'm not mistaken, judging by the people who come in here and they say, I found you through the telepathy tape research, I kind of think that we're the guys for that. And I'm happy to be, because I think we did our research on that really thoroughly. And I think that we came to the correct conclusion. And it's something that I want people to find. And now we have the 2-part series plus the episode with Joe and Franco. And I'm happy for that, because I think that was really important. But
you guys introduced me to that, by the way.
What were you going to share with us? Because I gotta get out of here in a minute.
Soon.
Sounds good, guys. And I don't know. I was in a weird mood today. I hope it went well. Either way, I always appreciate talking to you guys, and I definitely have a goal of actually presenting the extraordinary Columbine narrative that obviously the alternative theory that I think is far more plausible, and it really is layered in terms of the levels of extraordinary connections that I think are still we should prioritize and spotlight and actually present Columbine. And that is my fault, and I apologize for that, because for some reason I was just very interested in going off in the different avenues today, and so I do apologize. But I will say that we have a lot of untapped. No, it's not your fault. It's just a lot of untapped sort of still content that I believe is the most extraordinary kind of windows into Columbine and what effectively took place. And I still think that, that Nathan Johnson connection to the Obama plot obviously was important. I'm glad I got to cover that for a brief moment, but still you have this real credible avenue of the Star Chamber and the White Eagle Underground, and this legitimate breeding experiment, and Paul Schultz and Belinda Schultz, and that I really think is important in order to kind of present how the network functioned in terms of the internal memorandums that were offered by local investigators who were catching a window into this, and that in itself draws the connection directly into Michael Aquino and the Star Chamber, and which effectively brings in modern Gladio and the strategy of tension. So in no way, and it helps bridge the gap with that of the Blackjack Pizza delivery, drivers that provided them the weapons and things of that nature. And then Wade Michael Page, obviously, and the Todd Blodgett Confessions of a DC Madam tie-in, which is very important and crucial. So if we get the chance, we could legitimately focus just on Columbine if I do come back. That's all I'm saying. I actually won't fuck this up.
I scheduled the 3-part.
It's a 3-part. I don't give a damn. Let's call it a 3-part.
I
want to do it. Yeah. You know the
deal.
Well,
we have to ask our handlers first.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's real. But you know the deal. That means after this is over, Austin, you go straight to that calendar, dude. I mean it, and I mean it, dude.
Will do. I will. And by the way, this is a direct line into, let's say you had mentioned you wanted to talk Epstein, and I forgot to sort of draw that line directly into that of the Vegas shooting with Jared Kushner and the Al-Walid connection to the Mohammed bin Salman attempted assassination in Vegas that night. This is a
3-part series that we're just going to call like Austin Picard and the theory of everything.
Yeah,
because it all connects. It's a mesh that everything connects. It's nothing just happens in a vacuum and then ends. It all rolls into another operation and another operation. So yeah,
you know what Bill Cooper presented this as? He legitimately invoked the rites of Ishtar and Molech and sacred sex rites and a sort of ritual blood sacrifice for this sort of younger age group in the springtime, effectively, which is why many of these mass shootings happen whenever classes are reconvening or things of that nature, right? Whenever it's sort of I believe what he was hinting at and alluding to was essentially there was a way to harness emotion of the general public in certain let's just say seasonal applications of how you could effectively let's just say emotionally impact the vast majority, and sort of seduce them into effectively embracing and really kind of reacting in a certain way as well. And this is Hitler's birthday, the anniversary of Waco and Ruby Ridge. So in no way, and by the way, federal investigators were on alert, high alert. They were aware, allegedly, that an attack was scheduled to take place on the day prior to the event going live.
Isn't that always the case?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, did I tell you guys about the I think I did tell you guys about the actual FBI, the head investigator for the FBI on the Columbine case was effectively, his name was Dwayne Fusilier, and both his sons, one of which actually produced the Hitman for Hire video, which showed Eric and Dylan walking through Columbine High School and then having the school itself be destroyed in a bombing at the end of it. And it was co-produced by the son of Dwayne Fusilier, who was the son of the FBI investigator who was put in charge of the Columbine case. And his other son was one of the first witnesses on the ground at the school who claimed to actually witness one of the pipe bombs going off and hearing a conversation between Dylan and Eric and being the first to call 911 at the time, which is very convenient. There's so much more we can talk about, man, and beyond that, I this DC shooting, like, what the hell, man? This kid,
that was weird,
dude. He was recruited at 15 years old by the CIA. He was a part of death squads in Afghanistan called the Zero Unit Death Squads, and they were, responsible for heinous war crimes. But I'll leave you with this, and it's you guys know how much I appreciate you, and really, you had been talking about the Disclosure Project, and that kind of sends me off into many different areas, and it's very interesting how much I do believe this has been seamlessly paired with this new age esoteric ideological system of control. That's what I believe. And
it's the new age occult backdrop to everything. Like you said,
Absolutely.
Blavatsky and all these other characters, like, this is the thing that all of these high-ranking elites, whether they're political or otherwise, are immersed in. And it's the thing that a lot of people who look into this would love to omit from the discussion because they don't know how to place it. And that is a huge mistake. Right.
And that is why I think when Serge Monast in Project Bluebeam, I thought, honestly, I was emotionally, like, this resonated with me, just reading through the stages of Bluebeam and the orientations of what they claim to want to accomplish, utilizing electronic and supernatural forces, basically having a kind of transcendence of all these official deities in their geographical locales and having them
powers and principalities over geographical locations. Yep.
Dude, it's insane how they manifest this allegedly in terms of Bluebeam itself, and the use of telepathic hypnosis, by the way, guys, which is effectively involved with the. He claims it holds great potential, and this capability could allow agents to deeply plant, or to be deeply planted with no conscious knowledge of their programming. And he goes into very much explicit detail on this. It's fascinating, but the point that he made that I really thought was worthwhile in mentioning that applies to our conversation was essentially comes through, and he talks about obviously embedded chips and all this global satanic forces, right? And utilizing permanent psychological disorders and things like this. But he ends the essay by the way, he was killed for this, in my opinion. This guy was probably hit with one of the heart attack guns, right? Which I do believe at this point we have evidence and records of this being a legitimate technique that is relied upon. But anyway, so he officially acknowledges the cashless society as being the digital monetary system as being absolutely essential. And throughout the course of forcing people to inevitably accept this new version of communism, right, is essentially how he presents it in his statement. But this is what he says, and I think it's beautiful sentiment. He says, the new technology is designed and built to track down and control people everywhere. This technology is being manufactured for a specific purpose, and to refuse to see and recognize that purpose, which is to enslave the entire population of the world, is to deny the emergence of the Antichrist, and the establishment of the New World Order religion and government. If you cannot see, if you cannot learn, if you cannot understand, then you and your family and friends will succumb to the fires of the crematoria that have been built in every state and every major city on earth, built to deal with you. No one is safe in a totalitarian police state. And I just thought it was beautiful sentiment, because he is without a doubt, especially considering the great sky in the show, the abdication of freedom, the cost, right? That is being, this is, something that I think the vast majority have yet to contend with, right? And so, this is the ultimate agenda of diabolical and deliberate deception, and it's more efficient than any of us could probably put into perspective.
It's the fruition of the propaganda that we've been subjected to, the programs that were birthed out of World War II, the alien crap that we're being fed, and the disclosure that's supposed to come. Like, it's all, I guess it's all coming to a head in our generation. And I know that's gay to say, because everybody's like, oh, every generation thinks that. But like, if you just look at the progress of all these different programs, it seems that we're coming to a head and everything is converging all at once. And what is the point that it seeks to converge to is exactly what you just read right there. This new religion, this new world order, this new way of things. And it feels like, I don't think that they labored as long as they did just to drop the ball at the finish line. So I think we'll end up seeing it. But Austin, we got to end it here. And but I guess not necessarily, because we're going to have a part 3. So like I said, when this is over, man, go ahead and check the calendar, and we'll run it back real soon. One more time, your plugs.
Oh yeah. So you guys know the Underclass podcast, definitely the best place to find me, and then the patreon.com/the Underclass podcast. And just really don't take for granted, I'll just say, the concept of free will, and I think the moment you realize how vulnerable you truly are, is, I'm not saying that we're not protected, that there's not, a divine path in a way that we can hopefully rely on in certain moments that will, at least keep us rooted in the, just as far as the ethical foundation of how you pursue these ideas, how you try and just appreciate the people around you and the relationships that you hold near and dear to your heart, and you hopefully, actively pursue becoming better, at every way and every level, because that in itself, I think I had mentioned it in the last episode, like it does. I think the most important and profound kind of really outcome that I've experienced from this process has just been, the ultimate level of gratitude for attempting to really better myself at every level of who I am becoming, and in this active and meaningful way where I'm let's just say, hyper aware of my character defects and how I affect others in a negative way, and hopefully course correct as much as possible. And try and not be as self-defeating as I am at times. You know what I mean? I think that's a crucial thing as well, to if it's in any way, kind of inhibiting you or right, prohibiting, or whatever the term is, right, as far as keeping you from achieving what matters most, right, which is just, hopefully trying to be a reflection of God in a way as much as you possibly can. Now that doesn't mean in any way you can achieve perfection, which somehow I don't know why, but I feel like this is some sort of goal within my mind's eye, and why I like to have so much control over the outcome of things. It's just why I do my podcast the way I do. I absolutely love having a finished product that's like every layer of it, has been massaged into the smooth, rounded out, but then it's like, man, this isn't realistic though. At the end of the day, in terms of I cannot do that exact same presentation, right, in just the course of a general conversation and interaction with individuals. That's impossible. You know,
I think
and
you're kind of like me. I did like a personality test one day or something like that, and it was talking about like the thing that I thrive off of most, and I think that you probably get this is you do a much better job of it than I do, but it's like this when whoever you're explaining to gets it, when they understand, you go, there we go, there it is, man, I did it. Like when you can convey the whole picture to an individual and they see what you see. And it's like, I'm not asking you to believe what I believe, but I need you to see what I see in order for you to understand the perspective. And once they get that, then my job is done. Then I'm satisfied.
yeah, I think also a factor of not wanting to be alone in my ideas, you know, and feeling like, okay, you get it. You understand where I'm coming from. Like, that's really, I think, just to feel as if, you know, I'm not entirely, you know, I don't know. There's this sense of, it's kind of interesting because as much as I myself personally am opposed philosophically to the state, man, I feel like people have these, you know, these kind of fail safes that are subconsciously embedded in their mind's eye that they aren't aware of, and all of a sudden they're just back in that same mode of fully embracing the totalitarian agenda and facilitating it as well. And kind of pursuing their own, it's not at all in line with their best interests, right? And I'm sitting there feeling like I'm an alien among anarchists. I'm like, what? You guys claim to be in opposition of the state, and now you're trying to use it as a meaningful tool for solving the current structured system and leading us into a more ideal and principled direction. I get it. I'm not saying that there's no meaning to let's say, I'm not saying that you should give up in terms of if you have some sort of avenue to actually creating change. But I will tell you that at the end of the day, I am not under any illusion or misconception that it will inevitably result in a positive direction, because I'm witnessing the ultimate agenda playing out. And in no way does the political paradigm apply in terms of the two-party illusion. So that's the only thing. And basically, you know, also what happens when you view the Libertarian Party as a vessel or a vehicle for change? You elect a gay man to represent your moral values. Good job, guys. That really worked out. You know,
that's exactly what it always was, though. But
yeah, I know.
That's the meme. You know, the meme with the astronaut.
Yeah, always has been.
Always has been. Always has been.
Listen, Austin, I got to wrap though.
Sounds good, guys.
This has been a great episode.
We're gonna do it again.
We're gonna do it again.
But next time we'll have the fog machine on.
I wish we could have him in person.
I know. I wish we could have him in person too. I wish part 3 was in person. Maybe part 4 will be.
Maybe part 3.
I would love that.
All right,
man.
listen.
I told you I'll be there in March, dude. That was it.
All right.
First week of March.
First Saturday,
Weekend.
Friday and Saturday. It's 6th and 7th. We lost our venue, but we'll fix that.
We'll fix it, guys. Thank you for hanging out. This has been a great episode, and we'll catch you again tomorrow. I think we have another great guest tomorrow. I'm not going to say who. Until then, don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. We'll see you later. Oh, I had to press